Unmuting. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay, when you are there.
All right. Call to order the Town of Fraser Board of Trustees meeting Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026 at 6:01 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Katie Fisher,
Adam Quickland.
Peggy Smith.
Julie White. Katie,
Correct.
Katie Souls.
And Brian Sirkbenek. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda that have the minutes for May 20th, 2026?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll move on to open forum. This is for business not on the agenda. So if you would like to approach the board, you could have 3 minutes of time at the podium. If you're online, please raise your hand.
Hi, my name is Alex Leeskang. I applied for the position of town manager. I grew up in Florida. I have a condo in Sunsong, and I ran a business for the past 23 years down in Centennial. And I just wanted to say thanks for having me here, and I just wanted to see how this goes. I grew up on the East Coast, went to college at Harvard, and I'm interested in the position. So thanks for having me.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex.
you.
Anyone online? Okay. All right. We will move on to the Fraser Housing Authority. So, could I have a motion to suspend the Board of Trustees meeting and open the Fraser Housing Authority?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Now we will discuss Fraser Housing Authority Resolution 2026-0601, approving property management agreement with Griffiths Blessing for St. Louis Landing. Sarah.
Is Griffiths participating tonight?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, Board of Trustees. Sarah Catanzarite, Assistant Town Manager. We do have online with us Griffith Blessing. So I will let them introduce themselves in just a moment here and kind of share some of their experience and credentials with you. And then we do have a draft of a property management agreement that we can talk through. Just wanted to kind of let you know how Griffith Blessing has come in front of us today. They have been working with MAD since the beginning of this project. They were part of the original kind of RFQ that MAD responded to with them as part of that package as the property management company. So they have been providing to MAD guidance through various kind of questions in regards to property management as we've gone through the financing and some of those different things that have required their involvement. Once we have a property management agreement signed, if that is what the board wishes to do tonight, then we can start working with Griffiths Blessing more on the general kind of lease up for the St. Louis Landing project. And we will be talking about tenant preferences after this item, so we can get to that. But first, I would like to let Tom and Mary Beth introduce themselves. They should be online with us.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Tom Polachek. I am one of the vice presidents in multifamily with Griffiths Blessing. I've been with Griffiths Blessing for about 7 years, but I've been in the industry for close to 25 years, mainly in multifamily.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth White. I'm the regional manager in the Denver portfolio. I've been with Griffiths Blessing for 4 years, and I have been in the property management sector for about 28 years.
Can you guys tell us a little bit about kind of just Griffiths Blessing in general and your experiencing managing properties, particularly properties that have income requirements, and just kind of the lease up process?
Sure thing. Well, Griffiths Blessing, we've been around for a while. We've been around since 1985. We are based out of Colorado Springs, and that's where our main office is, but we do have other satellite offices Our second office is in Denver, and that's where both Mary Beth and I office out of. But we oversee multiple properties within the mountain region. In general, in the mountain region, we have about 19 properties and about close to 1,300 units. Griffith's Blessing in total, we oversee 94 properties and just about 10.8 thousand units. In that portfolio, we have a little bit of everything. We have conventional, we have LIHTC, we have income restricted, we have student housing. We have done many lease ups, especially in the mountain region. In the mountain region, I believe we've completed about 11 lease ups. That is primarily most of our region in that neck of the woods. We also do commercial too. We manage over about 6.3 million square footage of commercial space. But Mary Beth and I, that's not something we're involved on at all. That is just a completely different department within Griffith's Blessing. But we are mainly multifamily. Yeah. I can't think of anything else right now.
Does the board have any questions for Griffith's Blessing before we jump on into the agreement?
Have either of you, in your past roles, been the ones leasing up these properties with restrictions? Yeah.
Mary Beth, have you?
I have not done the lease up part of it, but I have ran a mixed use LIHTC 55 and older community in Denver. And we did take it over at 75% occupied and got it up to about 95 before the ownership moved on with it.
Okay.
I've done many lease ups, just not income restricted. So Mary Beth is definitely my right-hand person when it comes to anything like that. She has a lot of really good experience with that.
Do you see any unique challenges with our project? And how, if so, how do you anticipate?
I don't, from anything. The product that is being built sounds really fantastic. And from what I know in my other mountain towns and my other mountain regions that we've done lease ups in, there's a really strong demand. So no, I don't really see a problem. I think it will go very smoothly.
We have questions about the agreement. Should we wait until we start running through it?
Sure. Okay. Any other questions for Griffith's Blessing before we jump into the agreement? And so I did want to point out 2 edits that we have made today. One of them was per Katie's suggestion. There's a tenant management plan that's included as an exhibit that kind of goes through some of the different responsibilities of the management company. But we have moved into the agreement itself under manager's duty, provide tenant management and all associated duties as outlined under the residence manager's responsibilities as part of the Schedule C management plan.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And then under the management fees, which I believe is the first exhibit, we had left off 2 fees that should have been included. And so after some back and forth with Griffiths earlier today, utility fees and damage fees. So their management fee would be 3%. That's in addition to any actual expenses of the project, which we would cover and would come out of the revenues from the project. I have looked at this in comparison to other similar projects, and that very much seems to be in line with kind of the industry standards. So if the board did opt to approve this management agreement, I would ask that you guys, as part of your resolution, just approve it with these edits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, it's 3% of the revenue or the rental revenue.
Correct.
Okay.
The rental revenues and then some of these different kind of fees that are listed here are considered part of that general rental revenue. We have clarified that things like subsidies to the project from the town would not count towards that 3%. Yep.
On the fees, is this a good time for a question on that?
Yep.
So on the additional services fees and with the, for manager, executive director, regional manager, early on, seems like in the first year or two, we should have some gratis with that because there's going to be a lot of unexpected things coming up. And I'm not sure if you all are willing to do that, but.
Well, with what those fees are, they are really kind of outlining the over and beyond. Like an example I can give is like if you had a third party needing to do an audit and you needed our accounting department to adhere with your third party, that is something kind of over and beyond the normal day-to-day life of the management agreement. So that is usually what these are here. We will usually outline anything that we start to say, hey, that's a little bit over and beyond. But to your point, yes, your first year lease up, you're going to have involvement from me, Mary Beth, possibly even other people in GB. They probably wouldn't fall under that because that's just a part of the service. It's more thinking of those extra things that would be out of really our realm or our control.
What are some other examples of that?
Gosh, I mean, like a HUD audit is usually a big one. We recently had one where a property converted from a cash basis to an accrual basis, and there's a lot of back end on just with accounting in general with that, and a lot of manpower behind that to get that to convert correctly. But I mean, if you're not thinking of anything like that, that wouldn't really apply.
So we have had this agreement reviewed by Butler Snow, who we've been working with on the bonds for legal counsel. I think their lens was primarily in terms of making sure it was going to have compliance with CHAFA and our different funding sources and making sure that CHAFA had what they needed in there to ensure that they are properly meeting the verifications for income and things like that with AMI. And then we've also had Kent's office review this to verify that there are appropriate kind of legal protections for the town. I think as we work with Griffith's Blessing, they've been thus far, it's a fledgling relationship, but pretty responsive. But I think as we go through that first year, I wanted to make sure that their fee structure seemed in line with other similar property management companies and types of projects, and that we had those legal protections. I think as we forge ahead and are in the weeds with them, we can, obviously revisit this after that first year. And if there's things that we find to be lacking, can address that. But believe that this at this time kind of covers the general responsibilities of what we would want from a property management company with kind of a transparent fee structure and the legal protections that we would expect in such an arrangement.
So what is it, the 4,000 a month, what does that equate to in terms of occupancy?
That is a good question.
Let's just say if it was 80% occupied, what would be the gross revenues from?
And I had previously looked at what that 3% would equate to, and I do not remember that number off the top of my head. If we were to be, say, fully leased up and what we would expect to be coming in for revenues, the 4,000 would be the minimum base that we would pay.
Right, no, I understand. I'm just wondering how that equates to, in terms of gross revenues. I mean, it sounds reasonable to me, but
Like what percentage it is, I would anticipate that we would generally be paying a much higher rate. That would be the base level.
Yeah. Well, we have about 70 units in building C coming online first.
133,000 and change.
Okay.
Yeah.
In gross.
it's 2,000 a month. Easy on the time. Is that 3%?
Divided by 3%.
Divided by 3%.
Yeah. That would be your gross revenue per month.
So yeah, the first building, once it's online, should be pretty close to that 4,000. It just also helps compensate for the ramp up and marketing initiatives that will take place with this as well. I think that's part of the reason that you typically see these 12-month initial terms with the property management company, just because they need some time to get settled, get the operations up and running, make policy decisions on how they operate, but also just the marketing campaign that they've already demonstrated. They talked about previous projects where they do a good job on that marketing and getting that pool of applicants that will ensure that we, can drive down that vacancy rate as much as possible. It just allows them to kind of get in place.
Did you have something else?
No, that's really it.
So when would this agreement start? When would we start paying that 4,000 a month?
So once we sign this agreement, it starts in that we can start working with them on that lease up process and getting a website up. So we have a landing page with information, and even before they're officially ready to start actually having tenants sign on the dotted line, we can kind of collect an interest list. That fee structure does not start immediately. Tom, I know I asked you about this and you sent me, or BJ sent me that price structure initially.
I'm trying to look into find it. I want to say it's usually 60 days before first occupancy, but it could be 30. That's why I don't 100% quote me on that.
Yeah, so we're not starting off paying 4,000 to,
Right.
Thank you.
yeah. That was one of my questions
we-
as well.
Talked about the other day. We've got limited options up here, and there's a lot of people that are going to be trying to get out of leases and giving them some extended period of time so that, they don't sign immediately and have to move because they're going to lose their deposit and have to break their lease. So how does that factor into the pay scale? How much lead up time? You're talking, you said 30 days or 60, but could be 90. I don't know.
So Tom, with an assumption that we likely will start having tenants move in mid-November, providing for something like 90 to 120 days for those tenants to understand that they've been accepted and they've been approved to move in and secure one of these units. How much of a buffer time do you guys see with this initial ramp up?
30 days usually. Would you agree with that, Mary Beth?
Yeah. Yes.
I would say usually about 30. Yeah. And our best, what we're going to do is we're going to try to release as much as possible. So usually 30 to 60 days is really when we start hitting it and we really start our marketing efforts. Our goal is to really be pre-leased as much as possible, especially going into Q4. Not a lot of people love to move in Q4. So our really strategy is going to be try to capture some of the end of the summer months to see if we can get some pre-leasing done.
I think we're going to see a lot of people move in Q4. That's kind of our peak season up here.
Would you put your mic a little closer on you? So Sarah, thank you. There's $4,000 a month. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. Go ahead. The housing authority pays that.
Yes, it will be.
And what fund does that come out of, or is that just in the bank account, or?
Oh, Adam, that is
Is that going to be asked of us?
No. So
Or-
Lori and I have been
supplement?
working with our finance team to try to make sure we understand and are ready for all the different flows of funds and how this is all working. So we have a trust account set up with UMB. So not to steal or update thunder from later, but we are set to close on our bonds tomorrow morning, which is very exciting at long last. All that money will go into actually several funds at UMB, right? Depending on, there's an operating, there's a reserve fund, we have a debt service fund. And so we will work with Griffith's Blessing to figure out what makes the most sense in terms of how they access funds without us needing to sign off on every little expense and give them money. But they would collect those rents, they would go into a bank account, and they'd be able to pay money out of that bank account. In terms of how we exactly set that up, is still to be determined in terms of Griffith's Blessing's role in accessing that money to run the project. But it will be through these accounts that are being set up in UMB that are specific to the Fraser Housing Authority. And then the subsidy that the town is committed to, would move from our general fund to one
the
of these
250.
funds. Yeah.
So is there a copy in here, sample lease for renters? I mean, is it?
No, not yet. Our next conversation on the agenda tonight is to continue that tenant preferences conversation. And then once we kind of confirm that we are moving in the right direction that the board wants to see, we will be working with Griffiths Blessing as well as our legal team to make sure that, one, we're compliant with all our grant and funding sources in terms of what this looks like, as well as fair housing laws and practices. Griffiths Blessing, I imagine, has several template leases if you guys want to speak to any of that, but we would then look to have those leases kind of customized to what we're looking for specific to St. Louis Landing.
And we actually use the National Apartment Association lease and the CAA approved lease. So it's both national and state approved.
So are these gonna be like 1-year leases or 6 months, or are they gonna be month to month? I mean, how is that gonna work?
We have been talking about year.
We always prefer at least a year, especially in lease up, even a year plus, just to get yourself so you have a buffer. So you make sure you lease up and stabilize the property and not starting to have renewals coming up. So yes, at least minimally 12 months.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, thought. That's what I hope.
So I have a question, not about money, but, so you'll have your property supervisor and then the resident manager, who has quite the list of duties. Property supervisor, are they here in Fraser, or are they someplace else that they answer to?
We will have an on-site manager actually
Right.
on the at the property 100%.
Okay, this says resident manager, so that would be your resident manager? Because on this agreement, there's development staffing, including job responsibilities, are as follows: property supervisor, the development supervisor, and ensure that on-site employees are trained and familiar with their job related, and then the resident manager.
I would imagine that it would be the resident, and I would assume that
Okay.
Mary Beth would be that supervisor that you're reading.
Okay, Mary Beth is shaking her head.
Yep.
So, Mary Beth, let's say through the grapevine, we hear that the resident manager is whatever, being very unsatisfactory in some of their roles. Who would we go to?
You
Would
would
that
come
be you?
directly to me, yes.
Okay, all right.
So I meet with my managers at least 3 times a week. One is a one-on-one, one is with the we usually do an owner call. And then I also do a with my portfolio, I do another manager meeting. So at least 3 times a week they meet with me, and then my plan is to be at the property, myself and or my director of maintenance services, at least twice a month.
Okay, great. Well, you've been at this a long time, so I have a lot of faith in you.
Yes, I have.
Discussions with Griffiths Blessing is that generally they would allow the person in that position to choose if they wanted a unit on the property or to live somewhere else in the area,
Yeah,
but they would be local.
Mhm. Good.
I've got a
Okay.
question.
That's my question.
Tom and Mary Beth, how do you guys have a process where you collect any type of feedback to Katie's point, from the residents that are living in these apartments, as far as trying to get good feedback as far as how to improve quality of the site or services that you guys provide?
I think the key to any successful property is having communication. And that can be through surveys, that can be through resident events, that can be just one-on-one interactions. But to answer your question, yes, we can easily always survey our residents to find out what's going well, what isn't. But usually it's the actual resident events, getting people together and creating that sense of community. That's actually when you get the best feedback. I personally think.
we'll check with you later on what that would look like there.
Okay.
Be great.
Multifamily is always interesting.
Yeah, summertime,
Oh.
when you can have it outside. Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I don't think so. Okay,
Want to make a motion?
so I'll make a motion to approve resolution, Fraser Housing Authority Resolution 2026-0601, approving property management agreement with Griff's Blessing for St. Louis Landing.
Can you make that motion including
With
edits
the
discussed?
edits that Sarah outlined in her presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Does any public want to make a comment before we vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, great.
All right.
Exciting.
Look forward to working with you guys.
Now we'll see how this next one goes.
And we'll keep Tom and Mary Beth here in case they want to weigh in or you have questions for them related to the tenant
Absolutely.
conversation.
Sounds good. All right, can I get a motion to close the Fraser Housing Authority and resume the Board of Trustees meeting?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, moving on to discussion and possible action regarding St. Louis Landing tenant preference and leasing. Sarah and the Griffith Blessing team.
Thank you. So what we are looking for this evening in regards to this matter is just confirmation of the board's direction. Back on April 1st at the board meeting, we discussed kind of potential approaches to structuring tenant preferences for St. Louis Landing, including tiered systems, lottery, waitlist. So this staff briefing outlines what I understood the direction to be at that time, as well as some areas where I'd like your additional feedback or kind of confirmation. As a next step, once we have that confirmation, we can continue to discuss as needed. But the idea is that I would work closely with Griffith's Blessing, again, as well as our legal team, to make sure that we are drafting kind of formal policies that we're able to implement, both in terms of fair housing, again, in terms of grant restrictions and funding restrictions. And that's something that it would actually be feasible for us to manage by Griffith's Blessing with, support from the town of Fraser staff. So on that note, I'm just going to go through kind of this staff briefing and look for kind of yays or nays on some items, and then where we're looking for additional information. A spreadsheet did go out, and I have information from Brian on his thoughts on what should happen here, so I can share those as well. But we'll just kind of talk through the items. The spreadsheet really matches the staff briefing. So,
when you say it did go out, was it in the email that I didn't see today?
it was emailed out the end of last week.
This one. Oh, he's got it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I just saw it
Double
today.
check
too.
spreadsheet. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank
So no worries though. We'll talk through it. It
Great.
was just to help
Perfect.
inform
Thank you.
hopefully a more structured conversation. So
Springs
what-
eternal.
right. We'll try to stay on track here, but discussion's good as well. So what we talked about is having a tiered lease up, right? In part due to some of the different funding that's involved. We do want to make sure that we rent all the units. With Prop 123 funding, we are really tied to, we have this many units at this AMI. We don't really have any flexibility with that. So in an effort to make sure we are fully leasing all units, that the project can continue to pencil, we want to allow for some flexibility. So the base qualifications to live at St. Louis Landing are you must meet the AMI requirements, the area median income, and the unit must be occupied as your primary residence. With the tiered system, we would look at everybody that applied that met the criteria of tier 1 and would lease them up. And then if spaces remain, we move on to tier 2 and to tier 3. And we can continue to differentiate as needed. So tier 1, what was discussed was that being focused on Fraser workforce and then countywide critical workforce. So anybody that works at a physical business within town limits. So, you know, if you work at Fraser Tire and Auto, if you work at Sharkey's, you would be part of this tier. And then critical workers that work anywhere within Grant County. And we'll talk about critical workers in a second here. Stop me at any time if you have questions. Tier 2, again, you still got to meet the AMI, primary residence, but just having somebody who is physically employed within Grant County. So that could be any profession, anywhere within county limits. One item that I would like to propose potentially adding here that I had meant to include and had forgotten about was potentially looking at somebody working regionally whose region includes Grant County. As an example, at the housing seminar that I was at today, our division of housing rep lives in Grand Junction, but he is required to live anywhere in the region that he is serving. So looking at somebody like that who doesn't physically have to be in Grand County, but I think they're a great person to have in Grand County, right? And they are working with us and kind of supporting the county. But I'll throw that out on the spot for consideration as part of tier 2.
So would that fit into remote? Because he would have to be working remotely because you can't commute to Grand Junction.
He is. And when we get to tier 3,
Yeah.
but he's working, whether he's in Grand Junction or here, he's remote, right? Because he's serving a vast
Gotcha.
region and he, you know, can't live in Grand Junction and
Okay.
here, for example. I had a similar conversation with one of the ladies that works for Senator Bennett's office, that she ended up in the community where the deed restrictions allowed her to be eligible, because a lot of the deed restrictions in these mountain resort communities, she was not eligible because she wasn't considered a physical worker. So something for consideration. That could go in tier 2, or it otherwise would fall into tier 3 or tier 1 if you wanted. Does that make sense? Okay.
Tier 2 to me, yeah.
Yeah.
I would just be careful with regionally how that can be translated as far as like contractors that work in regional areas, but maybe it's more public service, state, federal related. And
That's what I was thinking, yeah. I was thinking,
I think you just
my QQ friend in Kremling, or, you know, there's people like that service 7 counties or, you know.
Yeah, and again, you may have sales rep that
Yeah.
have a vast region, so they are working in Grant County as well as elsewhere. How do we want to treat those workers?
I think the Bud Rep covers Jackson County as well.
So how would we address that right now before we move on? How would we change that verbiage? Be physically employed within Grand County.
Or you are someone working regionally whose region includes Grant County? I
Okay.
can think about the language. I guess the question is, if you want to include them, do you want to include kind of government facing type
Well, that
personnel or anybody?
it makes sense so long as they're of service to Grand County.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, right.
They're working here, so that's
Yeah.
not even an issue.
Right, if they're of service to Grand County.
Okay.
Yep. I'm
I
good with that.
also kind of wondered about the Fraser workforce. In tier 1, that eliminates anybody that works at the ski area.
It does, but they become part of tier 2.
So
Yeah.
you don't, I mean, I don't think there's that many businesses in Fraser.
Well,
Yeah.
good, they'll be close to the top.
Yeah.
There's not. And again,
Yeah,
it
we'll-
is
we'll
giving
get
them
to tier 2
priority.
quickly then.
But I think that, yeah, I think that Fraser, anybody that lives and works here should have a priority.
I just,
Okay.
I personally kind of just nixed the Fraser part and just went with Grand County because people move jobs, you know.
So are you talking tier 2?
No, I'm just comparing
Okay.
Grand County versus Fraser specific.
Yeah.
And kind of to Peggy's point, there's not that many jobs in Fraser specifically.
Right.
And if people, you know, worked at Fraser and then they decided to work for the ski resort and, you know, they still qualified, I don't know. I feel like if you're working in Grand County, you're still helping the community.
So I
So it's
think
just
that this is
Fraser- the
how we're
initial
gonna get them
concept.
to the initial sign up. So they're working here in Fraser. So they change jobs, but they're still working in the county. That wouldn't mean that they would lose their unit. This just gives them priority.
Correct.
Well,
As long
putting
as they
people
meet
in.
the AMI and it continues to be their primary residence, once they get the unit, it's theirs if they continue to meet those other
Yeah,
requirements.
as long as they're working.
So it's just a question of if you want to give priority to those people who are physically working at businesses located in Grand County, or if you want to take them out and just prioritize critical workforce.
Mm,
I think their tax, it's Fraser project, that Fraser resident should have first crack at it.
Yeah,
think.
I agree.
I mean, substantially, to your point, Katie, substantially subsidized by the taxpayers of Fraser.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
They're building it.
and if it's a short list, then we get to tier 2 quickly.
Yeah.
It's
Correct.
kind of the way I see it.
I could be totally wrong. I imagine for initial lease up, we will move through these tiers. I mean, I think there's a lot of demand, but there's so many people looking for an apartment, you know, come November 1st when
Right.
that time, you know, to sign up comes around.
Even if that's the case, I mean, I think setting it up, it might even just be a political thing to say we're taking care of Fraser people first, but
Well,
I.
and it allows them to walk to work,
Yeah.
Yes.
which is
Well, there'd be
a
plenty
good
of
thing.
slots open for tier 2 people. I mean,
Oh,
they
there's
should,
plenty.
Fraser, employees, and they should have priority.
Okay.
Right?
That's-
It's not saying we're not gonna consider tier 2, it's just.
Yeah.
They're down the list a little bit.
Mhm.
$250,000+ a year into this.
Okay. So I am hearing that the general consensus is to keep that in tier 1. Okay.
Yes.
And then tier 3 is anybody who just meets the AMI requirements and are going to occupy it as their primary residence.
Right.
So again, that would include remote workers. We'll talk about retirees in a second, but retirees could fall here. Really just anybody else, as long as they are going to occupy it as a primary residence and meet the income requirements. Okay, so what we talked about, are we generally in agreement with this tiered structure then? And we'll get into further prioritization, but
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna say we haven't talked about longevity in the.
Yeah,
yes,
coming
that's
up later.
coming. Yep, in terms of additional priority. Okay.
Where to plug it in.
So in terms of employment standards, what I believe we landed on was that we were looking for an average of 30 hours per week or 1,200 hours over the course of a year.
Yeah.
All in agreement?
Yep.
Okay.
So
Um,
who's gonna monitor that? I mean, how are we
You
gonna,
are.
I guess my other question was, when someone terminates employment, $300 discount, what happens to them? Do they lose their unit? Or if they have a year lease, and then they just finish out a year lease? Or? how do
the
we-
way I envision this, and if the board wants to see something different, or if there's different thoughts, we can talk about it. But again, this gets them into the unit. Because we are allowing people to live there ultimately as part of that tier 3, as long as they're meeting the income requirements and the primary residence requirement, like they would stay in their unit.
That makes
If they have a
sense.
way to pay for it.
So they can change jobs, they can take time off, whatever.
And how do you manage their income requirement?
So Griffiths Blessing has that lovely job in terms of doing that verification, and I believe we have to do that on an annual basis.
Correct.
So if somebody does start to make too much money, if we have a spot for a higher AMI, we could potentially move them on paper to that spot. They wouldn't necessarily have to move their unit. But once they've kind of reached above that 120% AMI, they would have to find something, with the idea that they should at that point be able to afford market rate. And that is what our funding sources require.
Above 120 or 140?
We have some flexibility, I think, for them to go up to 140, but once their lease comes up that next time, I believe that flexibility goes away.
So when you have, say, a single mom with teenage kids and they have part-time jobs, are those jobs counted as household income?
That is an excellent question. Did you say they're over 18 or they're under 18?
Well, they could be either way.
Did you catch that, Mary Beth?
From college for the summer.
Yes. So over 18, it would be considered part of the household income, but under 18, no.
And if they're only home for the summer, is that kind of throw things out of whack again?
That can still be put in. So we actually have in our system, we have what it's called an affordable, an affordable platform in our property management system. And we get to put all that into the system and it spits out it lets us know per those requirements. So it can let us know, depending upon how much they made for those 3 months, if it affects the entire year or not.
Okay. So it's not the primary residence, just their income, it's the whole household.
It is. It's
Household
definitely, it is
income.
done on by the household. Yes.
Okay.
And by leaseholder,
Yes.
leaseholder only, and you can't be a leaseholder under 18.
So household income for 18 and above within the household.
Yeah.
That's my
Yep.
understanding.
But remember the AMI table, how it goes with,
The more
more people,
Yeah. Based on
right.
Gotcha.
But it kind of gets tricky if kids are off at college. Come home for the summer,
It
So
only
then-
benefits
then
them,
you're-
really.
then you're like a one person. And then all of a sudden you got 2 kids that show up and work construction and make $30 an hour or something.
Right.
Yeah, but it's only for 3 months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see it being picked up and
Right.
taught.
I was gonna not say that on the official record. I would think we would look at what level of flexibility we're allowed around that based on
Yeah.
the funding,
Yeah.
if they are visiting versus when it becomes their primary residence.
Right.
I'm going down a lot of rabbit holes.
All right. All right.
Always. Okay.
Property.
Thank you.
So eligibility, again, I don't think we need to get into the weeds of the mechanics, but Griffiths Busing, as part of their duties would be verifying employment documentation, work stubs, or an offer letter from an employer. So somebody who is looking to move here to accept a job, that would qualify them. Any questions? Okay, so in terms of defining critical workforce, I kind of threw in down on here everything that we discussed. So we can keep it all, we can take stuff off, we can add something, but I'll just go through the list and let me know if it's a yay or a nay or if we need more discussion. So public safety and emergency response personnel, that would include law enforcement officers, firefighters, fire district personnel, EMTs, paramedics, other emergency medical response personnel, judicial and correctional personnel. We all good with that?
I think it's
Okay. Healthcare and dental workers, good. Municipal and county employees,
So healthcare, would that cover vision also?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I think it would also cover mental health.
Okay, great.
Teachers, this would include early childhood educators and then just kind of the various school district staff. So the janitors, secretary, front desk, all of those folks. I'm good with that. Lyft transit workers. Grocery workers was something that somebody threw out. If we are keeping kind of businesses physically located within Fraser in that top tier, that would already include Safeway. So if we keep grocery workers as part of the critical workforce, that would expand that to like City Market, the new Nash Market. So that was one question, if you guys want to keep that or if Safeway was really what you were looking to prioritize.
I don't think it's good to pinpoint one particular business.
No, I don't think so either.
And you wouldn't be, they would just fall within that category of businesses located physically within.
Right, so I think we just take that out.
I think of it in terms of COVID, the essential workers, the guys
Yep.
that had to go to work every day.
Yep.
No matter what is
Yeah.
going on.
Good point.
Yeah, but if we're already separating Fraser businesses out, then this is a little redundant.
Mhm.
It's just,
Yeah.
it just helps out City Market.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on
And they're
tier
outside of
one
town.
already.
Right,
They're
so,
working here.
right.
Uh,
Yeah, I would just delete that one.
Okay, so we're taking off
Yeah.
that one. Okay,
And I
perfect.
thought about in addition to municipal and county employees, we probably should add special districts. Because there's a lot.
So next is other government and special district employees. So as examples, this could include U.S. Forest Service, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Fraser Valley Metropolitan Recreation District.
Mhm.
Yep. Okay, great.
Yep.
Nonprofit employees.
I don't think so.
I would,
I mean, I think, again, if the nonprofit is based in Fraser, then they're already gonna be in tier one. And then if
Okay.
it's a nonprofit that's not based in Fraser, they're like, well, then they should be in tier two with everybody else.
Agreed. Agreed.
okay, so they just, tier two would cover them anyway.
Right.
Okay, good point. Yeah, the more that we can simplify it, the better.
Right.
Gonna revisit this every 6 months or a year or something to tweak it, because I don't know if these aren't hard and fast rules. I mean, things will change, or we may have different opinions after 6 months or a year.
Well, it may depend on leasing rates as well.
Right, yeah. I mean, if we, running 50% occupancy, we may want to change some of this stuff.
Well, tier three basically just is
Catches
the
everybody.
individual.
Pull.
Yeah.
But we can definitely revisit it. I don't know that we need to revisit it every 6 months, but I think, in a year, I think lease up is going to look different than waitlist and how many units are opening up. Like at some point, if it's super competitive every time a unit opens up, that's a different situation of, when a unit opens up, nobody needs it kind of thing. So yeah, I envision this continuing to evolve. I think one of the questions is, do we stick to really strict parameters, or do you allow some level of kind of staff administrative flexibility in defining? One question, just because I mentioned mental health before, if it is a nonprofit kind of mental health focus, do we still want to include that under that healthcare umbrella?
I think if they can
Yeah.
argue for a higher tier, then they get to argue for a higher tier.
Yeah, okay.
Sarah, is this list what's gonna be actually like including what's here in the parentheses?
Those are there as an example.
Okay, just an example.
Yeah.
Not limited to.
This is definitely not, again, this is just to make sure we have the appropriate direction to come up with a finalized, polished policy that would come back to you for consideration. Anybody that we are missing that you wanted to see included in the critical workforce?
I was thinking about people that have worked in Grand County for
We're getting to that.
10 years, something like that, because if they're at the same job, they've been here.
Yep.
And I'm playing whatever role that is to be consistent.
So where we're looking at them right now is if we want to do some sort of weighted lottery or point system of giving them extra preference. So is that what
Gotcha.
you're suggesting, or do you want to actually put them up in a tier?
Yeah,
where
because they're not
considered?
critical necessarily, but they would definitely, I think that they would deserve more weight.
Okay, yeah, and we're getting to that.
Good.
So persons with disability, there are some mobility impaired units. They would receive first priority to have those ADA compliant units. Permanently disabled residents right now would fall under the third tier, unless the board wants to see something different or we're told something different by fair housing practices.
I think if we have an ADA unit, we need to.
I agree that yes, they automatically get that unit so that it's matched.
Yeah.
Try.
Yep.
I think there's limited opportunities for individuals in those situations.
Yep.
So,
That's the intention.
I said, I think there's limited opportunities for individuals in that situation. And I think those units have to be prioritized for that.
Now, how many ADA units are there?
I do not, there are units, I don't remember that number off the top of my head. I should, because it was part of our Division of Housing application. All right, so eligible retirees, we talked about 62 years of age, having been employed within Grant County for a minimum of 5 years. And then we could determine if that's within the last 5 years, within the last 7 years, how the board wants to look at it. I will say if they are considered as part of tier 3, it doesn't really matter how we are defining them because they would just qualify based on those other. But if the board wanted to see them in a different tier, then we would want to distinguish this.
I have a similar opinion as the ADA. I think there is very limited opportunities for elderly people in this community, county-wide. And I mean, I think there's more opportunities for childcare than there is for old people housing. So just to kind of put it in context.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think somebody that's retired and that's worked here should be tier 1.
Do they have to have worked here? I
So
mean,
let's, and rather than,
Well, you know, maybe
Well, they're not,
there's further debate, yeah, but yes.
I mean, this is really for workforce housing. Primarily, we get it. If it gets locked up by, you know, retirees that are gonna be there for years and years and years, and it's not gonna serve the purpose that we.
You know, so I kind of thought about that, and I'm looking at these rents and the AMIs, and I actually don't see that somebody in that situation would be looking for this because of the rents, and they would not be retired. They would still be working.
Yeah.
So, you know, it kind of, I think it will play itself out and moderate itself.
Maybe there's a
And-
quota of units that would be for retirees. 62
Yeah.
is young.
Yeah.
Right?
a lot of retirees,
And,
they're our
you know,
best volunteers. Truly, a
Well,
lot of
I
volunteers.
think you're gonna be, a
Big-
lot of it's gonna be based on that 30% AMI. And it's pretty hard to qualify for a 30% AMI if you have a job at McDonald's. So you'll more likely be on social
Need a few
security.
of them to bring
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
Mhm.
AMI
Yeah.
down.
yeah.
Well,
AMI for one person is 23,520 for 30%.
What percentage?
30% AMI is
so
23,520.
that's somebody on social security.
I mean, I thought the average was 90 something, 93.
Yeah, if you go up
That's
to
30%.
100%, it's 78,400 is 100%.
Okay.
So I think the question is, and then we can talk about how we're defining them. And does the board want to see them in a tier other than tier 3? Adam has said tier 1. What is the consensus of the board?
Well, if they, tier 1 includes people that have lived in Fraser. Right? So they would be, so long as that can include retirees.
Well, tier 1 right now is somebody who is working at a physical business located within the
Right.
Fraser boundaries
The,
Or critical.
or critical workforce in
Yeah.
Grant County.
you know, a lot of these folks are the ones that have been here paying taxes all this time so that we could do these improvements that we've been able to do, big part of it. And build our community. So, I think that I'd like to see them bumped up to 1 or 2
Yeah, I can see.
some way.
What about a residency requirement? Do you want to have a residency requirement in Grant County or Fraser?
I think it should be broader than just Fraser.
I think weighted, yeah, well, weighted. I think Fraser should have, if it's for seniors. Again, it's because they're the ones been paying the taxes. They're the ones built this town. That they should be weighted, in their favor, and then Grant County. And if it, not necessarily employed within the last 7 years, because maybe they've been retired for 10 years. And they have to find a different place to live. But they had worked. So, I don't know if that, I don't think we should leave that within the last 10 years. Minimum of 5 years. Do you know what I mean, Sarah?
Yeah,
Somehow
that
to
makes sense.
wordsmith
Yeah.
that, so it does address the fact that they've been here and they have worked over, you know,
And
the time that they've
I
been here.
think what that's meant to address, Katie, but you bring up a really good point. If they're not just now retiring, but have lived it, this was meant to not include somebody who maybe worked here 5 years when they were, 20 to 25 and have lived in Florida ever
Right.
since and now are coming back kind of thing.
So we could bump it up. Anyway, we could bump it up 10 years. This could be my 10-year spot.
I don't think they should be tier 1. I mean, we don't want this
Okay.
to become a retirement community, right?
No.
This is for
We want people to
workforce
be able to
housing.
use this as a stepping stone to move up.
What's that?
Yeah.
This is supposed to be like where people can move up in home as they go.
Mhm.
You know, I think that you're right. They're just gonna sit there and die there,
They could be there for
I mean,
20.
for lack of a better word.
Well, I think Clark's biggest problem was finding that 30%.
Yeah.
And If we can go to the seniors, that's where you're gonna get it.
Well, in one point, ultimately, AMI is going to trump all. So if the only person in the pool that has a 30% AMI is number 500 on the list, they will get that 30% AMI. The question is, if you have multiple people meeting that 30% AMI, who do you want to prioritize?
Gotcha.
A couple suggestions, you could match them to the tier where their previous employment would land them if they were still working.
Mhm.
Or you could, tier 2 might be a middle ground.
I know we're talking tiers a lot here, but I know the next part is lease up methodology. I think a point-based system makes the most sense.
Right.
There should be multiple ways to get an apartment at this place. Maybe it's that you've lived here for over 4 years, or maybe it's that you've, like there should be points kind of for multiple options, and that can get you to the highest tier or the highest level of points, in my opinion. So like my example is like longevity in Grant County. If you're 4+ years, you get 3 points. If you're 2 to 4 years, it's 2 points. If it's 1 to 2 years, it's 1 point. 0 or 1 year, 0 points. And then points for how long you've worked in the community, that kind of thing. And maybe there's more points for Fraser workforce versus working in Grant County.
But what about like a high school teacher who gets recruited? They didn't get any points.
We could wait. We could have points for critical workers. 3 points just automatic if you're one of the critical workers.
So if we want to back up for just a second, I can explain the different lease up methodologies, and then we can discuss kind of these prioritization pieces. So with the tiered sequencing, you will lease up tier 1, right? And within tier 1, we can have a weighted lottery where if certain items give you an extra ticket in the lottery. So there's still an element of chance, but if you have longevity, if you graduated from high school, like whatever we choose can get you extra tickets. What Brian is suggesting is the point-based system where we take out the kind of game of chance, right? And you get assigned points based on the criteria that the board chooses. So within tier 1, whoever has the most points, that's how we're going through the lease up. I suppose we could still do a lottery if we have people that end up, they've all got 10 points, right? And there's only 2 units left. But that is the difference between the weighted lottery system versus a point-based system. But within how we currently have this structured with the tiered sequencing, it would still happen within tier 1. So you do your lease up with tier 1, there's units still available. Now you go to tier 2 and you look at people's points there. So a critical workforce is still going to trump somebody who's lived in the community for 10 years based on that tiered structuring. So I just want to make sure we're all working with that same understanding. So the first question is, if we want to move forward with a point-based system or a weighted lottery within those tiers, and if that is what the board wants to do, then we can go through each of these and list what the board would want to prioritize through that point-based or weighted lottery system. I will also throw out that if there's anything that you want to like absolutely prioritize, they should be first in line. I mean, we could even create a tier 1 before the tier 1. Or there could be things like a first, I don't know if you call it a first right of refusal when you're talking about rental units, but if we wanted to provide that for, say, a town of Fraser employee, be it current or somebody that we want to offer a position to. It really, at this point, is up to the board. And then once again, we'll just vet that whatever we are doing is legal and in compliance. So on that note, we'll come back to the retirees. What are the board's thoughts on, are we all good with continuing with this kind of tiered sequencing?
Yes.
Okay. Do we want a weighted lottery system within that or a point-based system within that?
What's going to be?
Or
easier
just
to
a
manage?
simple lottery?
I just don't like the lottery aspect. It's like,
Yeah,
I want
gotcha.
somebody who just like, I don't want the Orlando Magic getting shacked. That's.
They have the same number of points, and you have to have a lottery
I
type.
got
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It could be whoever applied first gets
Yep.
gets to be above the next person.
That's
You know,
what-
Thank
wait,
you. And that,
First in time, first in line.
For you, I
Like
get
a
a hybrid.
hybrid.
that got left off this system, but that was one of the options originally presented as well. And Winter Park, when they did their lease up for Creekside, it was a first come first serve. If you met the qualifications, you got a unit. They did not lease up on day one. I also understand that not everybody can show up necessarily on day one, depending on their job or whatever it is, but you could do a first come, first serve within the tiers. And then the wait list is first come, first serve, again, within those tiers. So that is another option.
Like that.
What's the timeline for this? And when do we need to make a decision? Could this be the first iteration of our
This is, will be the
This is the
second
second.
iteration.
second?
It could be. I mean, if the board wants to go back and fill out the spreadsheets and send them to me, I can bring it back, at a future meeting. But the idea today is to get direction so that we can start crafting a final policy. We can still make tweaks. But we probably want to avoid repeating this conversation too many times without kind of moving in a direction.
So your point system within each of these sections, like I said, first come, first served if they fit. And then if there's a question, then having some things that are weighted, some things that are important to us, like longevity in the community, which local students would qualify for.
Yeah.
Somebody that had been here, they born and raised here, and they're gone, but they come back and they want to make Fraser home again. They should really have a priority.
Well, does it have to be a graduate student? What if they didn't graduate?
Right.
Here.
Well,
That's okay.
I guess that is a
It's all right.
redundancy I didn't think about, like, because I have local high school graduate 2 points, but then I also have longevity in the community, like 4 years gets you 3 points. So it's almost double dipping.
That's
So,
true.
Yeah,
That gives them a good head start.
Yeah.
not wrong, for sure.
Brian, I would say like you're prioritizing somebody who grew up here and it could be changed
Yeah,
to
that's good.
Julie's point of somebody who attended school here for X number of years or, whatever.
We gotta take care of the locals first,
Yeah,
for sure.
Old unit, yeah,
and maybe it'll keep kids in high school, get them to graduate. They get cheaper housing if they get the extra 2 points.
But does the board feel comfortable making a decision about if you want to do first come, first serve, weighted lottery, simple lottery, or point-based system?
The point seems fine.
Yeah, like the points.
Okay. And I think we can revisit this. And if at some point it makes more sense to switch to a wait list, first come, first serve beyond that initial lease up, I think that would be a reasonable action to take. Yeah.
Yeah, I think entering into the second building is a good opportunity, after the first lease up.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I would see this for the buildings, but again, we can tweak this at any time, and we're
Yeah.
going to have additional AMIs that are served as the additional buildings come on. All right, so I've heard a couple votes for point system. Is that the consensus of the board?
Points.
Beautiful. All right. In terms of what we give points for, I would recommend that you choose either living in the community or being part of the workforce versus having those both on there. And then I've heard that it makes sense to do it at the Grand County level versus Fraser level, correct? So do we want living in the community or being a part of the workforce? For a lot of people, that'll be one and the same, but there is a distinction there.
Well, I think
I'd say living in the
the
community.
consensus, I think, was working in Fraser.
Yeah.
is
Right,
better.
and that's already on there. That's the
But
tier
then you
one.
get double if you live and work here in Fraser, right? They're keeping both.
Yeah.
But wait, if we take Fraser out and we're looking at Grand County, does somebody get points because they've lived here for 5 years or 10 years? Or do you want them to actually be part of that workforce in Grand County?
I just don't know what they've been doing for the last 5 years if they weren't working here.
Could be a high school kid.
Could be a high school kid, it could be a retiree, it could be
Right.
a remote
Could-
worker.
there could be a
if we're
remote
not
worker.
distinguishing.
Right.
Something that's appearing as a question in my head is
Working.
disability. I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
is that considered working or is that I don't know how that plays out.
We have stuff for disabilities, don't we?
Couldn't quite
Is that
understand
different?
it.
Yeah, and I would like to ask legal counsel more about that in regards to fair housing and what that looks like. They definitely qualify if nothing else as part of tier 3, but again, if you want to look at somebody was working here and has become disabled, or if they've always been disabled, what that
Somebody
looks
that
like.
can't work, I guess.
Yes.
It is what I guess I'm getting at.
Yeah, and that was one of the questions earlier. They do qualify in that tier 3, but if we want to look at them differently than tier 3.
Didn't we have something about the ADA specific?
The ADA specific units we would give priority to regardless to make good use of those units.
If they're on disability and not working,
Yeah.
are they,
Right.
you know?
I mean, and Adam, one of the,
Right.
all right, are there thoughts on community versus workforce for longevity?
Community. And that includes younger people that haven't been in the workforce.
Okay,
Easier, you could do a point a year.
and Adam had recommended,
Well, they
Yeah.
are started.
Yeah, exactly.
To make the income requirements no matter what.
They do, it's like, I was thinking that.
But then again, that
Preference.
if it's a requirement.
The buildings could be different.
so Brian's recommendation had been 1 to 2 years was 1 point, 2 to 4 years was 2 points, and more than 4 years was 3 points.
So we're gonna keep the points get a little low.
But you
It's
get,
like, you haven't been here very long, you know, it seems like 50 years, I usually give them 50 points.
Right.
You know, 25 years.
don't
they
have
get like.
My idea with the points is that if any one category doesn't exceed 3 points, then one category isn't going to trump everything else.
Gotcha.
You know, so
See?
that was my reasoning for it. And then also, if you've been here for more than 4 years, you're pretty committed to being here.
Right.
You know, 1 to 4 years. You know, you
masses leave
Yeah.
at 3.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So that was my logic.
Elementary school, we're not gonna make friends with you.
And
Tier 3
if you
years.
hit 4 years and you're like, oh, I don't know, and then you get really good housing as an option, well, then you stay.
Yeah.
So we might keep people here longer as a result.
all right, so we're gonna go with longevity in the community. If you have really strong thoughts on how those 3 points be distributed, feel free to email them to me and we will incorporate them into the calculation. Thank you. All right, local high school graduates.
Kids here don't graduate from the high school, but they graduate online, but they've lived here and they've grown up here. So I think that's something to consider. And what if you only live to your one senior year? Does that matter over any kid that's gone all the way through here? Just things to think about there.
Oh, thanks.
Preschool graduation, 1 point.
Well, and the flip side of that coin is when you are 17 years old, you don't get a choice as to where you live.
Right.
Your parents moved here and maybe you had 1 year and you're like, I want to stay.
And you have to be 18 to be able to live in this complex
Right.
of your own space.
Right. Exactly. So, you know,
And again, I think we can do so many years within the school system. To Antonette's point, though, we have a lot
Just
of
say
kids that are
students-
homeschooled.
Yeah.
I think
If you
where
were
you're
in a-
living upon graduation is the most important thing. If it's an online school, but you're living in Fraser when you do it, then
So,
graduated from here.
so now we're talking points.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm going to encourage us based on time to not get too into the
No,
weeds
thank
of
you.
exactly how many
Yeah, you
points.
can
I
do
can
it.
bring back scenarios to you for approval
Yeah.
if you like.
I just said 2 bonus points for 2 points for being a high school graduate. What
Okay.
living in Fraser or living in Grand.
Being a graduate.
Yeah.
All right, thumbs up.
In 12th grade.
Graduates, great.
Yeah.
Previously displaced residents.
So you're talking about maybe someone who like lost their house in the fire and like needs to find a place.
Or
It
got
said they
booted
couldn't
out,
afford it.
whatever.
They moved down to the Front Range. Now they want to come back to St. Louis Landing. I mean, I think it kind of opens up a can of worms.
Yeah, I said no because other things can trump it. Like they have, if they're displaced, well, how long did they live here for? How long were they in the workforce for? So they have other ways to get points.
Okay, yeah,
That could be one too. If we have a big event like that fire, we could reconsider.
Definitely.
right,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Good point. If they move back up here, they're gonna have a job, right?
What's that?
If they move back up here, they're gonna have a job.
Right.
They would qualify another way. I mean, they could just move back up here and be unemployed.
Right.
This is just to give another weighted tier, give them maybe a higher priority over someone who's not displaced.
Yeah.
And again, this all matters if we have more applicants than units. If we
Right.
don't, everybody gets a home.
Yeah.
Be great. Okay. So time on wait list. So this would be looking into the future. And again, we can revisit if maybe we just move to a wait list. But time on wait list, if we are doing a point system, we're not looking at lottery attempts. But does everyone agree that that gives you some bonus points if you've been hanging out for a
Yeah.
while waiting for?
Sure.
This
Yeah.
one didn't even limit.
So-
I just
so
felt like
if
1 point per year that you're on the wait list.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
On our wait list.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're not talking Grandy's wait list and the.
Right. Just
Yeah.
St. Louis Landing.
We are not, but I would encourage us to perhaps revisit that as we look at housing regionally and with the Fraser Valley Housing Partnership. But right now, this would be St. Louis Landing.
Like a master list.
But we have talked about trying to create kind of master lists and systems so that, I mean, recognizing that we largely have a shared workforce and people move amongst these communities a lot based on where they can find a place to live. Prioritization for town of Fraser employees.
Yes,
Yep.
because we need our employees.
Michael, do you think that would be a benefit when hiring people too?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you lose somebody who's running utilities, these are hard people to get up here.
But will they be able to qualify?
I mean, that's still a
That's the-
requirement. That's
yeah.
that's
Yep.
the AMI requirements, and it still has to be their primary residence.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, things in flux as far as how difficult it is to get street operators or department heads or everybody in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would see each one of those as critical. We don't have people who are just, sitting around getting a paycheck. Everyone's like doing their part, and just everything relates to public service and the quality that's reflective of the town board as far as providing those quality of services.
So do we need to wait town of Fraser? Are they?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say yes.
So
And
do
I
we give them
have-
3?
That's what I put down.
I have seen other projects
To
in
what?
communities where they do put those folks at the top of the list,
Okay.
if the board wants to do that.
Well, they're all tier 1.
Right, but it would move them to the top of tier 1, so
And
if
you
a
give
unit is
20
available.
points. And they're at the very top.
Yeah, that's like the first right of refusal point that she had made earlier, as far as when units open up and we have vacancies for certain positions, if they meet those AMI requirements, could give them a first line, first opportunity for that unit is available.
Probably a good
Yeah.
idea to do that.
And I think it is a great retention and attraction tool if we can provide housing.
Yeah.
In a place it's really hard to get housing.
So what do we anticipate a lease out percentage to be, like 97, 95? I mean, there's always gonna be turnover, right? So I'm thinking about, is there generally one every 3 months for an employee or something like that?
I mean, I think in the pro forma for St. Louis Landing, I think it's the modeling is 93 or 95%
Okay,
occupancy.
okay.
I think it was maybe more like
So generally
93.
there's gonna be a unit or two turning over.
You have turnover.
Okay.
We have pretty good luck with turnover from the town, not having as much turnover with the town. It's just, everyone's got special cases.
Yeah, I meant, I meant the appliance, not the.
It's always an exception.
I mean, you'll once you have 3 buildings online, you'll have 129 units. I mean,
So there's gonna be 1, 2, or 3
Yeah.
at any given time.
yes, I mean, we've seen that strategy too with the town of Winter Park, especially when they have vacancies for police officers.
Yeah.
That's something they typically will
Get 'em
do,
in, get 'em a place.
especially if they have, and not just police officer, but a variety of positions. They've used that to their advantage to help get those positions filled, getting people to clear the streets of snow, like those types of things.
We should use that.
Pretty critical.
Also, I text one of the builders down there and asked him, how many ADA units are in building C? He said technically they all could be, 4 specifically designated two bedroom and two studios. So 4 ADA units in the building,
70.
but they all could be.
They all
Yeah.
could be.
But they're gonna have
Depend on
the,
the ADA requirements of the individual.
Yeah,
But they'll be, those are the
The-
4 that will be built
the-
out.
right.
built out, yeah, designed with
They've
lower
got like lower
cabinets and.
countertops and things like that.
Right.
4.
All right. Are we moving employees to the top of the list?
Yep.
Yay or nay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fraser Point,
Great.
yes.
Okay. Households looking to move within St. Louis Landing to a different unit. So again, this would be down the road. Maybe a household changes or looking for a different size unit. They would move to that unit and their unit would open up.
I mean, I think that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay.
Don't falls in love.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
We talked about all that, right?
All right. The last one on here was military service. That could be someone just finishing up active duty. They could be currently on active duty and their family is here. It could be prior service. Michael's giving me a look.
I mean, veterans
I'm
get
not
points.
good.
Vets get points, I think.
Do they fit within all the other categories of it already?
Right. But I mean,
I mean, right now they'd be tier 3,
Is it-
unless they have somebody who's working here, or they may currently be working here and have past service. So the military just is not considered.
You
Okay.
can differentiate between those currently enlisted or National Guard. I mean, you're not gonna have full-time, enlisted people living here. But you may have National Guard, you've got some part-time service members that active, if they're active, part-time National Guard, something of that sort, I think could be worthwhile.
Mhm.
Otherwise, dishonorable discharge is probably the right, maybe a call you can discuss. Because I don't think you want to promote it for people that have a dishonorable discharge from the military. It's
Okay.
my personal opinion.
Yeah. That are, active duty then?
well, yeah,
or
or we're
partial?
retired. I don't know. Retired
Well,
military.
How many people are currently?
I don't know.
Okay,
How
so
many
Michael
people
can
are
help you
actually
wordsmith that.
dishonorably
Okay,
discharged?
and again, you can let staff worry about getting into the weeds. We will bring
I
back
think vets get.
for
should get
approval.
points.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, but I'm hearing a yes.
What, tier 2 or what?
Again, it would just be points.
Points.
Yeah, 3 points.
Say they work in Fraser and they're retired military, they get some points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So on that note, going back to the retirees, any further thoughts on if we are comfortable leaving them in the 3rd tier, or if you want to see them in a higher tier?
That's a Katie
I
question.
think someone that's lived here for 10 years has been a part of the community, but 10 years or longer should go up to a 2nd tier.
Could we put that in the point system?
Yeah, 'cause
because
we're
you
not
have a
doing
funny
tiers
nickname
anymore,
and
we're
no one
doing
knows your
points,
actual real
right?
name. You
For
get-
these
We are doing
parts.
points within tiers.
Points within tiers.
We're basically making this as complicated as we can, but that's okay.
Right, yeah, because we're trying to
Well,
figure something out.
Here's the
It's a
other
little
thing
silly if you have like
is
10
if they're
applicants.
retired, they probably aren't making, they shouldn't be making that much money.
Yeah.
And
They
they'll
should
be
be-
booted up in the AMI.
So then their AMI is what's gonna qualify them for whatever they want.
Within their tier.
But so
Right.
long as there's a unit
Well,
available.
They're not gonna
yeah.
get bumped up to tier 1.
Well, and then again, like you say though, to leave it at tier 3, because we need to provide for our seniors. Heck, I might be living there someday.
No.
I
We
get
already
points
have
for
a
being on the
free-
town board for
Yeah.
12
Put
years.
a fence around the house and-
I want 12 points for that.
Oh, God.
That seems fair.
Sorry.
How old are you
Let's get this-
impersonating there?
All right, would you like us to come back to retirees at a future
No.
evening?
I would just make
No.
just one point.
Yeah,
The Grand County Housing Authority does provide a lot of resources and vouchers for those who are looking at senior living, assisted living circumstances.
Yeah.
So they have like the Grand Living Senior Home, the Silver Spruce Apartments, Cliffview Assisted Living Center. And they have some programs and vouchers that they work through and fund through Grand County
yeah.
for those types of initiatives. Just something that could be worth just researching.
So I think you could leave them in
Talked
tier
about this
3. Leave
And
them in
honestly,
tier
it
3,
wouldn't be
but
a
give
bad
them
idea
some points.
for a future
For
building.
the
to
longevity.
Give them
get
points
55 plus.
for longevity.
Yeah.
Okay,
Building-
great.
Whatever.
that's
Building A
significant.
could be all 55 plus
Right.
or something like that. So it's
Still-
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but it
So
was funded
Kate
by
has
the
suggested we
school.
leave them in tier 3, but with points for
And-
longevity. There's consensus for that.
I mean, they're getting points for longevity already.
But that they would just get those
They
points.
do a
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
work
I would think.
for free. A lot of work.
People that are working are paying taxes.
I guess so.
Yay, nay?
Yeah,
Maybe.
sounds
Okay.
good.
We got a home rule discussion. We still got to make it through.
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
Let's get going.
Oh, we missed that one, sorry. We were having a hard.
Okay, I was saying that Katie has suggested tier 3 with, and they will get the points that they would get for
Get some points for longevity.
longevity.
Great.
All right, great. Last question for you then in this regard. It kind of one of the topics that came up last time, I think Julie brought up, like a single parent who's working less than full time. I have seen in other policies exceptions for people who have been out of the workforce or working less due to illness, partial or temporary disability. Are there any groups that we want to make exceptions for in terms of that work requirement and the number of hours? So potentially somebody that's working less hours or has worked less hours over the last year, which is what we'd be looking at due to any of these circumstances.
Okay, so
So this would also include, potentially could be kind of part-time working retirees that they would move out of tier 3, but not be required to work the full 32 hours. Maybe it's 20 hours.
well, like you say, if someone has been working and they become disabled, but they're covered, aren't they already? Or not? to be able
Right,
to stay?
mobility impairment, they'd get those ADA units priority
Okay.
for those, but otherwise we have them just in the general tier 3 category.
Okay. And if they're already living there, we're not gonna give them the boot? Or would? we?
Correct, we're not giving them the boot. This question is really, do we allow people to work less hours and still give them consideration in tier 1 or 2 based on any of these circumstances, or do they just fall into tier 3?
I think they stay at tier 3.
They'll be paid
Well,
when-
if people are let
Yeah,
Yeah,
people work part-time and qualify.
they'll meet the AMI.
I mean,
Yeah,
again,
okay.
I think
Okay.
this isn't sort of a workforce housing
Yes.
project.
Yes.
People that are working,
Yep.
you know,
not
30
going
hours
up
is
the
not a
tiers.
lot. It's not full-time really in my mind, but you know, people that are working in the community and, you know, are service workers or whatever, that's what we're building this for.
Right.
All right, so I'm hearing we leave them in tier 3. That's
Yes.
where they qualify.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. If somebody would like to make a motion just to confirm this direction.
You probably want to outline that motion, Sarah.
I believe Antoinette, did you provide?
Can you,
I did. I think the motion should just be that the staff prepares, based on the conversation,
Yeah.
brings forward an actual policy at the next meeting.
yeah, can you tidy it up and bring it back and
I wouldn't.
finalize?
That sounded like a motion.
Yeah.
There
I'll
it is.
second that.
Any further discussion?
Tidy it up.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay,
thank you,
Thank you.
Sarah.
everyone.
Thank you. all.
Well done.
Okay. Let's see, so now we are
Well done.
moving on to Town of Fraser Home Rule Survey results and discussion.
The next.
Sarah, and Courtney and Magellan.
All right, do we have Courtney online? Okay, so I'll just give a real quick introduction and then hand it over to Courtney to provide her presentation. But Courtney works with Magellan. We hired them to put out a survey to the community to kind of gauge understanding and interest. And I should let Courtney say all this because she'll say it more eloquently than I will. But just to kind of take the temperature on the possibility of moving forward with the home rule ballot initiative. So with that, Courtney, you want to introduce yourself and take it away?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Want to make sure. Let me. There we go. Yeah, so as Sarah mentioned, my name is Courtney Sievers. I work with Magellan Strategies. We are a public opinion research firm. We are actually based out of Broomfield, Colorado, so just over on the Front Range. We conducted this survey in May. Excuse me, stepped ahead. I conducted this survey in May, and again, this was really to just kind of gauge voter support and opposition for Town of Fraser potentially moving forward with a home rule ballot question. And so what we did here was, and I want to talk about this first, is voter registration and turnout demographics. So there's just over 1,000 voters in the town of Fraser that would be able to vote on a potential home rule ballot measure. And really what I want to really explain from this demographic sheet, and I know this is a lot of numbers, is looking at 2022. That number is really what we expect turnout to be similar for a midterm election this year. And typically from midterm to midterm, odd year to odd year, presidential to presidential, those percentages rarely change. However, even though this is going to be a midterm this November, we are kind of expecting a little bit higher turnout based off of President Trump's first term, and seeing those numbers escalate during his first term's midterm election. So we're anticipating more of a number between 2022 and 2024. But really, what does that mean? That means a little bit more of those 18 to 34s and a little bit less seniors. And that's really the biggest difference, is just that flip there between 18 to 34-year-old voters and those senior voters, especially compared to an odd year election when you look at those 23 and 25 numbers. The other thing that you do see a little bit more in a presidential or a midterm election is you typically see those unaffiliated numbers go up. You can see that in 2024, but it wasn't as large as 2022. And so we're anticipating being in there at that 45-46% mark for those unaffiliated voters. And so just so that we have kind of an idea of who we expect to turn out, what these numbers are weighted on, as we go through here, even though we had such a lower response rate, as we go through here, I'll kind of touch on some of those subgroups and just wanted to give you an explanation. So again, we conducted the survey from May 12th to May 25th. We were able to interview 135 registered voters within the town of Fraser. And we really did as best as we can to interview as many of these. And I know we've talked to Sarah and we pressed it out through social media, through the website. We tried to get as much responses as possible. And unfortunately, we did come up just shy of that 150 mark that we were looking to complete, with 135 of those being completed among registered voters. That did give us a margin of error of 7.86% at the 95% confidence level. And again, this survey is weighted on those turnout demographics for what we expect that midterm election to look like. So just some key takeaways and opportunities. Again, this is among 135 people and has that 7.8, almost 8% margin of error, but there is still good information and good ideas to look through these survey results. First and foremost, home rule does show a majority support right at 51% of voters saying that they would support creating that home rule charter commission. And after they were informed of what that exactly means, that number increased to 57%, while undecided voters declined from 24 to 17. And I'll dive deeper into those numbers here in just a minute. As the town enters that kind of home rule discussion, you have that relative strength, but there is some concerns about growth, transparency, and some of those developments and kind of overdevelopment aspect is coming through here as well. And then last but not least here on these key findings is the most persuasive messaging really centered around local control, voter protections, and resident involvement. And so they felt like if the town of Fraser moves forward with a home rule charter commission, that it gives the town more flexibility to create those policies tailored, specifically for Fraser's needs. So let's jump into some of these numbers. Just first and foremost, since town of Fraser would be the ones that would be asking this question and creating that home rule from statutory rule form of government, we want to know just approval of the town of Fraser and the job that you all are doing providing those public services, projects, and programs for town residents. You do have a good response, a good approval rating among these respondents, 66% saying they approve, only just over a quarter, 27% saying they disapprove. And you can see that there by voter subgroup on the right. Excuse me. I will say among these voter subgroups, your margin of error is going to be a little bit higher, closer to 10%. But it is important to kind of see how they break down as you go through these. How much do you trust the town of Fraser government to generally do the right thing for residents? 9% said a great deal of trust, and 54% said a fair amount. 27%, just over a quarter again, said no trust at all. And this is very kind of typical of what we see for any sort of town government, especially right now in the environment that we are in. And so no big surprises here by these numbers. Among those that do not trust, that 27% that do not trust the town of Fraser government, mainly it came down to a perception that there's just too much influence from developers and those that are involved with the growth of the town. There's a perception that there's a lack of transparency and accountability, that they don't feel like you're listening to the residents as well as you could be, and there's that perception there. And then just concerns about housing, infrastructure, community priorities as the town moves forward. How familiar are you with a home rule as a form of local government? And again, we always want to ask this because as we all know, a lot of people aren't familiar with statutory rule or home rule forms of government. So we always kind of just want to get a feel of where people stand on familiarity with home rule itself. And 38% of these respondents said that they had either a very or somewhat familiar thought process of what home rule government is. However, 34% said that they were not familiar at all, with another quarter just saying that they were not too familiar. Based on your current knowledge of what home rule is, do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of home rule form of government? 39% have a favorable, 19% have an unfavorable opinion, and 42% were unsure. Again, this is not too surprising. Anytime we do a home rule survey for any type of municipality, you do see that unsure numbers kind of be a little bit higher as people are just not as aware of what home rule actually is, and then what that actually looks like and turns into. But you can see some differences spark here, and I just kind of want to point these out again. The margin of error is quite a bit higher, but you can see some differences there between men and women. And you can also see those differences there among age group, where you just have some higher unsure numbers, as well as those seniors 65 and older, 36% saying that they have an unfavorable opinion of a home rule form of government. So this is the uninformed, what we call the uninformed home rule ballot test. And really, this does kind of two things. It educates voters on what home rule is and what that looks like. And it also educates voters on the fact that you would be creating that charter commission among those local residents that would be elected by voters to draft that proposed home rule charter. And so there's kind of those two pieces to it. And then we're asking them if they would vote yes and approve the formation of that home rule charter commission, or if they would vote no and reject it. Among this question, it starts off at, again, 51% saying that they would vote yes and approve the creation of that home rule charter commission, a quarter saying that they would vote no and reject that ballot measure, and another 24% saying that they're undecided. And there's some key aspects here that I want to point out again among these subgroups. You can see that difference there among gender. There's quite a bit of difference of that gender gap, 15 points, with men being below that 50% threshold at 44%. And then you can really see that difference there among age group, where that younger demographic is more supportive of a home rule form of government versus those older demographics, especially those seniors, that are statistically tied on the yes/no version. The other subgroup that I really want to point out here is those unaffiliated voters, at 40% saying that they would vote yes and approve the ballot measure. And again, I want to point that out due to the fact that they're going to make up at least 45% of turnout this November. So it's important to keep an eye on those unaffiliated voters. And then last but not least, I did include in here those that completed the survey through the text message. That was the invitation from our voter file sample that we randomly drew, and sent that text message to them, inviting them to participate in the survey, versus those that took it on social media. And so 88 out of the 135 took it through the text message, and the remaining took it through the remaining, other than 6. We had 6 take it from the website, but the remaining took it through social media. We did ask them some information questions. And what do I mean by that? I'm really giving them more information of what a home rule government really allows the town to do, what it looks like, how it's created, who's creating that charter, and just details of what that actually allows the town of Fraser to do. And so really the top two messages here, and again, we ask them to read these messages and then ask them if that information makes them more or less likely to vote to again approve that Town of Fraser creates that home rule commission, a charter commission. And so first and foremost, this top message here at 67% saying that they'd be more likely is just an understanding and knowledge of that Fraser residents are who would write that proposed town charter, similar to a town constitution, and that voters in Fraser would actually have the final say by voting to approve it or reject it at an election. And so that was by far the first top information question that was given to them. Secondly, you can see there that it just talks about how Fraser residents would have more control to create their own local rules and policies rather than that one-size-fits-all system set by the state. The next two messages, again, we always add this in a home rule survey due to the fact that a lot of people, when they think that you're going home rule, allows you to not ask voters for approval of any sort of tax increase. And so we explained to them that even under a home rule form of government, Tabor is still a thing, and that requires Fraser voters to approve of any sort of future tax increases. That's the third ranked message here. And then just talking about how it's usually typically a diverse group of members to ensure that all voices and opinions are represented when drafting that town charter. That's sitting at 59%, the fourth message that was tested. And then last but not least, we had these other three messages that more than 90% of Colorado residents live in a home rule community. 59% said that that made them more likely to support it. And then these bottom two were not necessarily bad messages. They just had a higher no difference number. And so if approved, a home rule charter commission would have that 180 days to draft the new charter. 39% said that they would be more likely to approve, but another 28% said that that had no difference in their opinion. And then last but not least, just the concern that switching to home rule is that it would require additional staff time and increased costs for the town to create and implement any new, to implement the new charter, 30% said that they would be more likely to approve it, and actually 30% also said that they would be more likely to reject it, and 24% said that they would have no difference in opinion. So after they read those 7 messages of really what that would look like, what that opportunity gives, we asked them again, now that they've read that information, about what a home rule charter commission would do and how it would be formed if the election was held today. Would you vote yes and approve it, or vote no and reject it? And you can see it did jump there to 57% saying that they would vote yes and approve it, 26% saying no and reject it, and 17% being undecided. And you can see some key subgroups, again, moving from that below 50% mark to at least at that 50% mark, mainly men, jumping from 44% to 51%, so about a 7-point difference there. Those seniors jumped from 37% to 50%, so a 13-point increase there. And then unaffiliated voters jumped from, 40% to 56%. And even really Republicans, I want to point out here, because they actually went down slightly. But unfortunately, it's just a very small number in the amount of Republicans that we had. But I did want to point that out because you can see that 54% no reject among Republicans. And then last but not least, among those that took it through the text message, they started at 51 and jumped to 57. And those that took it through social media started at 59%, a little bit higher. And that makes sense. They're more active. They're following your Facebook page and see everything that's going on. But they started at 59% and jumped to 72. So about a 13-point increase there as well. Among those that said that they'd vote yes and approve it, among those 57%, a lot of them talked about just having more local control, community self-governance. That makes sense. That's a top theme that we see in a lot of home rule surveys that we do. And then residents having a greater voice and representation. They feel like if you are a home rule form of government, that they will have more ownership in community decisions and be able to have more input. And then third here on the list, the ability to better address growth, development, and community challenges by having that own charter and creating that for future planning. Among those that said that they would vote no and reject it, that 26%, just talking about concerns about more government, higher costs, additional bureaucracy, everything that comes with that, and just some of that antitrust, distrust in town leadership, the fear of developer influence in creating that charter that did come through in these verbatim responses. And then just they felt that there was too much power concentrated in a smaller group of people, whether that be a smaller number of elected officials or those residents that are creating the charter. And then again, this just shows those overall numbers from the uninformed to the informed, gaining those 6 points in support of that yes approve, and it mainly coming from the undecided side. We did ask a couple questions, follow-up questions on a potential lodging tax, and just where that would put voters' opinion at, and explain to them that if Fraser becomes a home rule town, it could potentially ask voters to approve different types of local taxes, one being a lodging tax on short-term rentals or hotel stays. And knowing that, would you support or approve it? And so really it was just, would you support or oppose the town of Fraser asking voters to approve a Fraser lodging tax? 66% said that they'd support, almost a third of that, 32% saying that they would strongly support it, 25% saying that they would oppose that, and 9% being unsure. And again, you can see some of those differences there by subgroup, really different among those genders, that gender gap. But you can see that increase in 63% among those seniors. We did ask a follow-up question to that of if the town of Fraser were to consider that lodging tax, how would each of the following potential uses of funding impact your likelihood to support or oppose that tax? So for each of these, we asked them, would they be more likely to support the lodging tax or less likely to support the lodging tax? And so you can see if the funding were to go towards trails, parks, and open space, 71% would be more likely to support it. Excuse me, just shy of that, 69% saying that they would be more likely to support it for public transit. And then just shy of that, even with statistically tied with the margin of error, 63% saying that they would be more likely to support it if the funding went to affordable housing. Then there is a little bit of drop here for childcare, but it is over 50%. And then it's statistically tied on more likely versus less likely or more likely to oppose for if the funding was to go towards tourism marketing. Then the last few slides here are just based off of demographics that match what we expect that turnout to look like in November. And so I'll let you all look through here, but I'll open it up to any questions that you may have for me.
A lot of good information. I don't have any questions.
So if we decided we were going to move forward and we've got this survey, what do we have to do to get the word out, and what kind of a marketing campaign do we need to start, and how much does that
Is
cost?
that these guys or that's in-house? Now we're talking in-house questions, right?
Well, not necessarily. I don't know.
Just, yeah, how are we, if we decide we want to do this, what's involved in getting the word out so that we can market this? And how do we do that? And
So we can recap that. Before we jump into that, are there any questions about the survey or their survey results for Courtney? And then we can have a broader discussion about if this is something we want to move forward with.
Thank you.
With the lived at current address, was that stated like that, or was it like, how long have you lived in Fraser, or how long have you lived in Grant County?
It was how long have you lived at your current address?
Okay. So I would be in that last category, even though I've been up here for that second category. Because I've moved once in Fraser. That's fine. Curious. You know? Right?
3 years ago. All right. Well, it's very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Very
great.
useful.
Thanks, Courtney.
Yeah,
Thank you, Courtney.
no problem. Thanks.
Well, I guess I do have a question. So based on these results, what would you recommend or advise the board to do?
That's a great question. It is hard. It is hard when you have 135 interviews because it puts you at that 7%, almost 8% margin of error, and you are sitting right on the bubble. I will say, just knowing the demographics of what we expect turnout to be this year and the fact that that younger demographic is more supportive of home rule, you do have a better chance of getting it passed this year versus waiting till next year. And then it goes to a different ball game in 28 where we're at the next presidential and that younger demographic goes back up. But I do think you have a better chance. The nice thing also with the size of the town of Fraser, again, let me jump to that. We're expecting roughly 500 to 600 voters to turn out this election. We have a pretty good idea of who those voters are. And so it allows you to kind of create that budget to really persuade and educate. And to be honest with you, so much of it with home rule is the education aspect of it. You don't necessarily have to persuade them. It's just really educating them on what it is and how it benefits the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Great. So we can kind of briefly recap what the process would look like. I did also want to introduce Linda Michelle. Linda, did I pronounce your name correctly? Make her co-host. We have been talking with Linda. She was one of the attorneys that was originally recommended to us by Michael Penny. She's worked closely with Castle Pines to work with potentially a special counsel for the home rule process. So we have invited her to be here this evening to help answer any questions that may come up. But Linda, if you wanted to just introduce yourself and then I can kind of walk through the process and you can jump in as needed and correct me when I misspeak.
Sure. Well, it's nice to see you all. Sorry, I'm not there in person. I can barely make out your faces, but I am Linda Michaud. I have a 9-person law firm in the Denver Tech Center. I've been practicing municipal law for 30 years, a long time, and primarily have represented home rule communities, although I did represent the city of Leadville as a statutory city for 20 plus years. Most recently, I did work with the city of Castle Pines and moving that to a home rule governance structure. That was in 2019 with Michael Penny as the city manager, and that was a really successful process. Currently, I'm also working with a couple other clients on charter amendments. So happy to answer any questions. If I can't answer them tonight, I'm happy to provide Sarah with follow-up answers as well.
So Peggy, to go to your question, if the board wanted to move forward with this, on June 17th, the next board meeting, we would have an ordinance that would initiate the process to basically put it to the voters for whether they wanted to form a home rule charter commission. So we would work with Linda on that ordinance. We would also bring forth a proposal to work with Linda as our special counsel for the board to approve at that time. After that, there are a number of steps. We have to publish the ordinance. There's a call for election. Then there's a publication of the election notice. And then petitions would become available. For the size of Fraser, we would need 9 charter commission members. So there would be 30 days that would come about roughly at the end of July, where people that were interested in serving on the charter commission would need to go out and get signatures. So they need 25 signatures that they would deliver to Antoinette to put them on the ballot. And then there would be kind of 2 sets of questions on the ballot. One would be, do you wish to form a charter commission for the town of Fraser? And then you would vote on the different charter commission members. Jump in if I miss anything, Linda or Antoinette. Assuming the voters decide to move forward with this, the charter commission would form. They have to meet within a certain time after that first election, and then they have 6 months to write a charter. So staff would work with them. We would have Linda hopefully at our side helping to guide that process and make sure we have a solid charter. And then that charter would go back to the public. So there would be kind of a public hearing to discuss the charter. And we would have the option to either do a special election sometime, anytime really, as long as once they complete that charter, or we could put it on next year's November ballot. So it really is kind of a question of, I guess, efficiency versus cost, if we want to wait to November, try to do it sooner. And then the public would vote on whether or not to adopt the charter. If they don't adopt the charter, I believe it goes back to the commission and they have another chance, and then a revised version goes back to the public to vote. I think a few considerations. I think the survey results show that there is a pathway to success if this is something the board wants to do, but it's not a slam dunk. So it would be a lot of education over the summer and getting information out. I think your average citizen is not familiar with home rule. The 135-ish folks that took the survey hopefully have a little bit better of an understanding. So I think it would be a big education campaign. And I think the other crucial piece would really be the board helping to identify charter commission members and encouraging people that you think would be a good fit for the role to run for the position. It is a small community, so there's only so many people in that pool. It's not a super long commitment, but it's a pretty time heavy commitment for those individuals when that charter is being written.
So is there a template for charters? We just start out from scratch?
So what Castle Pines did, as I understand it, Michael Penny gave the Charter Commission, Colorado Municipal League does kind of have a template, so to speak.
Okay,
right? And so he worked with that as well as kind of other communities' charters. And he, as the staff kind of that was taking the lead at Castle Pines, would draft sections of the charter. And at each meeting would provide the members kind of CML's recommendations, some other charters, and then the draft, and the commission would discuss that. He will also tell you the only thing worse than being a statutory community is a poorly written home charter. But then he tells you it's not rocket science, and it's not that heavy of a lift. So I think there are models out there that can be used.
Okay.
It will be staff time, though. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest considerations. Is if this is what the board wants to prioritize time and resources going to right now.
Yeah.
So Sarah, can you coin for me just a case of need? Why are we embarking on this, and what challenges or problems does it solve for us? I mean, it seems like a huge effort to just do.
It is an effort. I think it's a doable effort. I think it's a long-term kind of investment. I have not found too many people that think it's better to be statutory than home rule. So I think it's more a question of if Fraser wants to put forth this effort now. One of the questions that has come up is around lodging tax. Currently, the county collects the 2% lodging tax, and we get what we get from the county that comes back to the community of Fraser. So we could potentially have our own lodging tax that would supplant the county's lodging tax. That does have to go to the voters, but it does give us greater flexibility in terms of what we can bring forward to the voters per Tabor in regards to taxes. So one example, I think it was the community of Dillon. Linda actually kind of has an excise tax on short-term rentals. So that is basically a lodging tax on short-term rentals that is not equally applied to hotels. So that's an example of that kind of taxation flexibility. So there is a chance to have greater revenue sources, again, with voter approval. I think an example that we have run into was when we were looking to attract more commercial development, and developers right now really want to develop residential properties that they know they can sell and make profit on. They're less eager to develop commercial properties. And based on the statutes, we were limited in what we could offer a commercial developer. We, I think, came up with some pretty good packages for the businesses themselves, but in terms of creating that commercial space, it was more limited. And so that's another area where we might have greater flexibility. Linda, would you like to add any examples you've seen or just areas in general where you see a benefit in home rule?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is this from the CML? Is this a CML publication you have on the screen? Yeah. I mean, I do think, as a statutory town, you all know, I mean, you are only you only possess those powers that are granted to you by the General Assembly. So every legal question that comes up, we're bound by looking in state law for those answers. And a lot of times there's no answer. There's no true authority granted to statutory communities. So there is a lot more flexibility. You can be more nimble. You can create different organizational structures. I think in the area of finance and taxation and just general economics, you will have greater flexibility and authority to sort of craft your own revenue streams and uses of those revenue streams. Also, procedurally, I think you can save the town. It's more efficient to be home rule in terms of ordinance publication requirements. You can post more things on a website versus what's required under state law. There's just a lot of different opportunities, I think, for home rule communities. And I haven't worked with a home rule community that regrets having a home rule charter.
So some things that could help like promote things like transparency is I believe the town of Winter Park has a 2 reading rule for their ordinances.
Absolutely, yep.
So
requiring public hearings, for example, on second reading or first reading of all ordinances. You can create more transparency. Eminent domain, that's sort of a hot topic for some communities. You can require a supermajority vote of the town board to authorize eminent domain or condemnation of private property. So it can be a document of limitation. I would argue against making it extremely limited, but it does allow for more transparency.
Sounds like we're just looking, it's almost like we're just gonna do it so we can tax people. We can just add more taxes to everybody's tax, is what it sounds like. It's like more opportunity, more revenue stream, more.
So
It's just like taxing people.
2 ways that I would explain to that point. And one thing that I just want to note from the Magellan survey is that it did not say, are you in support of a lodging tax for Fraser if it replaces the county's lodging tax? It did not say that at all. It said, would you be supportive of the town of Fraser applying a lodging tax? So, it could have been interpreted as adding to the current county's 2%, but did not say replacing. And you had strong voter support in that survey for just Fraser adding a lodging tax. But essentially, a lot of the work that we've been researching on this is once you look to adopt that lodging tax, it would replace that existing lodging tax by the county. So for all short-term rentals and hotels, anything that falls into that less than 30-day stay, that a lodging tax would apply to. In Fraser, currently you are paying 2% of the sales tax of that going to the county. Somewhere in the ballpark, and my estimate is about $300,000 to $350,000 a year right now. You will have more development of hotels and things of that nature. So that will increase, that revenue stream will increase. But right now that is going to the county for directed initiatives, and Fraser is getting back a fairly small portion of that lodging tax.
Okay.
So that lodging tax could be
like real estate transfer taxes. We can't do that now,
Can't do
but
that
we
now.
will do it when we get it to be a home rule. We're just not-
no.
It's
It
not.
needs to be changed at state level before we can
How
bring
can Winter Park, doesn't Winter Park do it?
It's a grandfather type of
Okay.
yeah, the real estate.
Be doing that.
right.
Unless we're annexed into the town of Winter Park.
Another example, and Linda, please correct me if I'm misguided here, but something else that you can look at is, you currently have about 300 short-term rentals right now in Fraser. If you started seeing that getting out of control and you had a priority within the residents and the board of Fraser to look at trying to curb that a little bit, you could look at an excise tax to increase that tax on short-term rentals, and those impacts go towards affordable housing initiatives and childcare initiatives. Versus it allows you to kind of curb some of the behaviors that you just don't want through things like that. So the state of Colorado does not currently have a specific tax on short-term rentals, but you could apply, you could create an excise tax if you want to promote things like hotel developments and you feel like you do need to curb some things related to short-term rentals, you could look at an excise tax to try to curb that behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but also limit it though. You know, the
You
ability-
can limit it, you know, there's different things that like Steamboat has done in the last couple of years, as far as limiting in different zoning districts, but there's a variety of ways that you can approach that.
So couldn't we negotiate with the county to get more of that money back to Fraser? I mean, wouldn't that be an easier way to?
We've had preliminary conversations about a reimbursement agreement with the county, but it's just fallen flat. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be based on the personalities in the Board of County Commissioners at any time for that type of consensus. So even if you had agreement, that could change in the future.
So,
And-
oh, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought. So even if we were home rule and we wanted to make a change like that, we would still have to take it to the voters.
Absolutely.
So what's the difference between that and maybe increasing the mill levy to generate additional revenue? It's kind of the same.
But the bill is
primary-
property
the
tax.
primary language for like, if you are maintaining a 2% lodging tax in Fraser, I mean, you can say without raising taxes. I mean, we'd have to work with our attorneys as far as that ballot language, but you're not raising taxes if you adopt a 2% lodging tax that essentially replaces the county's lodging tax. And then you would be able to bring that revenue stream to the town, which per state statute, 10% can go towards marketing initiatives, and the remaining 90% can go towards things like affordable housing, childcare, public transportation.
Transportation is big. We're so short on that, for transportation. fund.
Well, the number one was open space and trails, which
Right.
is coming up zero because of transportation.
Right, true.
Um,
Local funding.
I have a question. You mentioned asking if we could renegotiate with the county, and you mentioned a reimbursement agreement. Now, it seems like a few meetings ago, I heard mention that we're already talking to the chamber about making them whole if we were to go down this path. So if we're going to negotiate out all our advantages, why, I mean, are we going to negotiate with the county to reimburse them? I'm trying to figure out the dynamics here, that if we do this and then we give up our advantages here or there, or not all the way, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, to be honest.
Yeah, so I mean,
But I think the attorney
What-
has.
There's no reason to do
She looks like she's gonna talk.
Peggy, you've been part of these conversations. It sounds like the county's concern or estimate of, as far as contributions to the Fraser Winter Park Chamber of Commerce is about 50,000 a year from Fraser.
That's this year. In the past, it's been 100. And they cut back this year because of that new law with the 90%. So they are now funding other things besides marketing, which for years, 100% went to marketing. So when that changed,
Yeah.
then the whole power dynamic changed as well.
So you're still required by state statute that at a minimum, you can state this however you want to, as far as how you approve the ordinance for the ballot initiative, but it could be more than 10% that can go towards marketing. You can state that in the ballot initiative, otherwise you just appropriate those funds towards, just because you have it to 10% does not mean that you can't appropriate outside of that 10% towards marketing initiatives and things like
Yeah,
that.
I guess what I was saying is if the impetus of this is to have greater income streams and have control over those, but we're negotiating to make the other entities that we're leaving behind whole, then what is the point of doing? You know?
Well, I think, I mean, I would just recommend it's acknowledging the benefit of the Fraser Winter Park Chamber of Commerce and how they do promote the local business communities.
Does
especially
it end with
Fraser.
the chamber?
Is it in
Are there other entities that we need to make whole?
I don't think so, but I think the chamber's always
I mean,
gotten
it's-
that money for marketing and they use, their marketing budget's about $400,000 a year. And that goes to a national or big Denver marketing firm. So it's for national marketing, not regional. And, I just wanted everybody to be aware that, this is kind of in play, what's happening with the chamber and the county. And then we have add on to this, you have a really bad snow year and everybody's in the whole state is looking at 90% of new revenue going to housing and daycare and transit, and 10% going just to marketing. And how are we gonna get people to come back next
And I'm
time?
not arguing against the chamber. I'm thinking if we're trying to control our money and
yeah,
we're negotiating
the
it
ins
back
and the
out,
outs.
then what are we really doing?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the bottom line is like we're giving, call it $350,000 a year of lodging tax to the county, and they are sure they're contributing 50,000 back to the chamber, but they're not. We're not getting that the remaining balance. So it's more money that we can decide what to do with.
It's really the BOCC dictating the use of those funds versus the town of Fraser dictating the use of those funds. It's as simply as it gets.
So a
And we're
couple
gonna have a huge
considerations.
increase with this new hotel, which, so it could double the revenues. So that's another piece.
Right.
So some communities have also said that when they started collecting their own sales tax, which is an option under home rule, and they started doing their own audits with sales tax, that without even raising tax revenues, they got more tax revenues because they found sales tax that wasn't coming to them. It was going somewhere else or wasn't being paid versus relying on a state audit. I don't know if that would be the case for Fraser, and that would require us to self-collect, which would have some upfront cost. So there is that possibility. I think in addition to the possibility for taxes, if approved by the voters, is really, as I've looked at this and tried to decide, I think it makes sense for Fraser right now, is just kind of long-term, having that flexibility and that ability to respond to things perhaps more efficiently and creatively, because we're not looking at what the state statutes say we have the powers to do, but if we have a well-written charter, then we just have the ability to do those things if they don't contradict state laws and if they are considered matters of local versus state concern.
Right.
There are some expenses up front, so I do want to acknowledge those. Legal fees for this process could be anywhere between 15 and 32,000 if the voters approve it and we move through a charter, kind of depending on how involved legal is in the crafting of that charter. If we wanted to feed our charter commission, that would be an expense. There is some expense with the elections themselves. It's much less if we go with the county coordinated election. But we could be looking at anywhere based on just rough estimates, I would say between 15 and the upward end 50,000 when it's all said and done, for maximizing legal assistance and feeding a charter commission and all of that fun stuff.
But what about, I'm concerned about the marketing of this thing, and we just can't, as a group, decide, oh, we're gonna do this, and it appears on the ballot, because we gotta get out there and really
Yes.
educate people, and that's
Yeah.
probably not just staff.
There's no
and
guarantee
board.
that
And that is a good point, Peggy, and a cost that I did not mention. We previously talked with Slate back when we first contracted with Magellan, and Slate and Magellan have worked closely together. So we could work with Slate to put out an informational campaign. And again, depending on how much they did versus how much Sarah Wick and staff did, would kind of determine that cost. But I think it would be crucial that we invest in that. If we want it to be successful.
Yeah, I think you have.
So would this be something like the DDA where we can educate, but we can't campaign for,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Yes.
So the, like, board members, I mean, if we had a good fact sheet, something like that, we could all go out and beat the bush and talk to people in our neighborhood and answer their questions and give them something to refer to.
Yeah, and Linda, please correct me if I misstate anything here. My understanding is quite similar to the GDA campaign. You personally are allowed to have views. I think the board
Correct.
can even pass a resolution in favor. But generally, in terms of information that the town is putting out on behalf of the town, we'd have to have pros and cons, and it has to be informational versus vote for home rule.
Right.
Correct. You can't urge voters in favor or against any sort of ballot issue or question.
Okay.
But you as an individual could.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't say after the ordinance is published, the town, thinks that this is the right thing to do
Yeah,
because of X,
no.
Y, and Z.
We're
But you
putting
can
it
say
on the
that
voters.
Katie Souls believes that this is the right move
Yeah.
because of X, Y, and Z. Is that fairly accurate, Linda?
Yes. Yep. And then, you know, if and when a charter commission is established, those commissioners then become really your mouthpieces too, to help campaign on behalf of the charter once one is drafted. So just in terms of thinking about who you might encourage to run for the charter commission, they can also be really good proponents, cheerleaders.
As far as that candidate list, you said they have to have a petition with 25 signatures. Are there any restrictions on the citizenry for like number of petitions they can sign? I think there is on
Not
town
yet.
board. Because I'm starting to think 225
Antoinette has
signatures
the answer.
So,
is quite a bit for this little town.
so it would be like a general election. There's 9 commissioners that are appointed, so you can only sign 9 petitions that need 25 signatures each. So if you signed a 10th petition, it wouldn't count because you've now signed more petitions than there are seats available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And if there are not enough people that run to be on the charter commission, then the board would appoint the remaining numbers, but we do need to have 9.
So you'd have to have 200 signatures roughly?
25. Each
25.
petition, each person for the charter commission needs 25 valid signatures for their petition to be valid.
But that same person could be signed on all 9 of them.
And that would be a second election to vote the commission, or is that?
No,
you
so
happen
the
to know
first
if they
election-
had to Go for it.
The voters will vote on whether or not to form a charter commission.
Gotcha.
And then on that same ballot, there will be language, something to the effect of if a charter commission is formed, and you would vote for the commission members.
Okay, so we could put it out together in November.
Yep.
So I want to know, without Michael and staff changes, can you guys handle this? I mean, you're wonder people, you're fabulous staff, but this should be a big load for y'all. And
Yeah, I do think it will be a lot of work to do, but if it's what the board really wants to do, then the staff will do it.
now, in the long run, will it make your job easier, Antoinette, or harder? Or wash?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely clear if it will make my job hard, and then to get to that point will be a lot of work.
Yeah.
I do believe that, because then once you've written your charter and if the town approves it, there might be additional steps needed after that, that you might have to look at some portions of your code that might need to be updated. So we think it is a long process. Specifically for the clerk's position, what is it exactly gonna change? I don't know. I'll be quite honest. There are some things within the election that can change within a charter, but they're all things that I've never dealt with as the town clerk. So what does that make different? I don't really know. I'll be quite honest.
And it sounds like there's things like noticing ordinances, and so depending on how the charter was written, that could work either way. But to answer your question, Katie, I mean, I would say we're prepared to do this, but just recognizing that it will take time and resources. So if this is the priority, like this is what we work on, you know, and it just has to balance out with other projects and stuff that's going on.
Okay.
So
The campaign, I think if we want to do it well, we probably need to throw a little money at it and have Slate help and help get that information out there over the summertime. I think it's crucial that the board is working to kind of recruit and encourage charter commission members. And then the lift of the charter itself, the commission has to meet within a certain time period after that election.
30 days, I think, was it?
20?
The 20. But then they have 6 months. So I imagine that chunk of work would largely, most of that would probably happen beginning in January. I mean, just realistically with a November election and hitting the holidays, and I imagine you have people traveling and
In a new board.
So you mentioned the election or the process would be about $50,000. Antoinette just said something very interesting. At the high end.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll leave it there or under. The work that comes subsequent.
Mhm.
Are I'm just trying to get my hands or my head around that phrase. It could be an enormous amount of work, or do you, does guidance have, or do we have an idea what the follow-up is, or a follow-up budget, for code updates or whatever is entailed after the charter becomes? Is that a $250,000 exercise the next year, or, and I realize that's kind of like asking what a car costs. It can be $200, it can be 200,000, but
Yeah, and I will say the one city manager who did not sing the praises of home rule was the city manager in Monument. She became the city manager after the charter was adopted and has said that it has been a lot of work to just do the code updates and do that implementation. I think they'd had a ballot measure for a tax that did not pass, so they, didn't have increased revenues, but kind of had these expenses of implementing. When I've talked to other communities, they thought the numbers, they had not had that same experience. They had not felt that it was that much work to implement the charter and update their code where they needed to. I don't know, Linda, if you have any experience with this and what that's looked like in the communities.
I suspect that town needed to do that work anyway.
I mean, I think it's an opportunity, right, to update the code. But again, it takes some time and resources to do.
Well, if you have to hire additional staff, then that's going to be additional expense for the town. Just wondering, is there a size of the town that makes sense? Or maybe put another way, if the town is below a certain population, does it make sense to go home rule? Because I don't know if we have sort of critical mass to make it worthwhile. If we're to spend $50,000, there's no guarantee it's going to pass. There's going to be a lot of work for the town. And then, is it worth it? I don't know.
I would say, something to consider is 90% of municipalities in Colorado are home rule. So that's every size of municipality. So I don't think the size dictates.
A slight correction to that. 90% of Colorado's population lives out. That's how I understand that stat. I think that's a fair question, Louis. I don't know if I know the answer. I mean, I've thought about that as well. I think we can try to keep things to certain budget ranges. I mean, it's going to take staff time, right?
Yeah.
Admittedly, probably myself and Antoinette and a new town manager in terms of that effort. So I think timing's a fair question. When I've talked to folks, I feel like, again, with that exception in Monument, across the board, municipalities are supportive of home rule. And as Linda said, don't regret going home rule.
I would just say, just from my interactions, observations, and updates to the code over the last 9 years, the town of Fraser's municipal code very much does reflect the state statutes. So as far as updates from a home rule charter, I mean, depending on what the charter says, but some of these code updates would be more specialized as far as like the benefits of home rule, implementing that into the code. I don't see a lot of code changes that would be, very nuanced. But, Linda, maybe that's something that you have some insight on as far as our types of communities
Yeah.
that haven't had very aggressive code changes, very much just highlighting or emphasizing existing state statutes.
Yeah, and I would say in Castle Pines, following the charter election and the passage of the home rule charter, we did spend some time, sort of auditing the municipal code. But if your code is contemporary and has kept up with various state law changes, I do think the code changes would be targeted. And I think a lot of that might come in your zoning or subdivision regulations, your land use provisions, and then maybe in your initial chapters. I know Centennial, when they went home rule years ago, a lot of things, they kept the status quo in terms of the structure, rather than changing whole cloth everything. So I would say it's more targeted. I couldn't give you an estimate of time or resources.
And I would just commend, staff between planning, our clerk's office, public works, and Sarah, just a lot of code updates have been with the nuances of state codes. So as far as like looking at the updates to keep track of, Alan and Garrett, they provided some updates to just reflect things like, turf and those different
Mhm.
requirements. I mean, those are, we've staff's done a good job, I think, as far as keeping the contemporary nuances of the state statutes. So, if you have things like term limits, you'll have to, codify that into the code because we don't currently have term limits. I don't necessarily see that as something that's going to happen here, given our smaller population, but that's just an example. So
Yeah.
I would agree with Linda. It's likely going to be more targeted as far as sections of code that you are updating.
And Michael, you mentioned the turf ordinance. That was already in my head as an example. So that is a mandate from the state coming down, and that applies to only statutory towns. So if we were home rule, that mandate would not have applied to us, or
You have to look at
and
each
that
of
is a
those
question.
on
That's
a
not a
case by
statement.
case
Yeah,
basis.
yeah.
Some of them, some of updates for state statutes, usually particular to like zoning and land use regulations. Home
Apply to
rule does not have the ability to trump a lot of the land use updates to the Colorado legislation. But a lot of those things would just be nuance, and you have the ability to be more limited in a lot of the areas of the code above what the state does, but it has to be evaluated on a case by case basis.
Sometimes. Okay.
If I could just jump in on, I just want to jump in on that one. I'm not aware that it wouldn't apply in terms of statutory or home rule. I'm pretty sure most of our recent ones apply across the board, but
That would
you know,
come
we
across
wanna-
regardless. Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be a specific question to look at it through that lens, but.
Let's say especially things related to water use in Colorado.
What is the?
Yeah, real quick, Louis, the quick rule, and that there's a lot of gray in there, is whether it's considered a matter of local versus state concern.
Big gray area.
So again, what that means exactly for certain issues, like the state's taken housing as a matter of state concern and initiated a lot of legislation around trying to create more affordable housing, right? That would still apply because they deem that state concern, but.
But can I just add one thing to that?
Please.
Sarah, I really appreciate this discussion because I do think a lot of the home rule municipalities, especially along the Front Range, have pushed back on the state legislature in terms of what they've declared to be a matter of statewide concern or mixed state and local concern, in which case the state laws still trump if there's a conflict. And I would say that some home rule communities have disagreed with what the state legislature is enacting and have challenged that their bills in state court based on their home rule authority, among other arguments. Ultimately, it's the court's decision about whether a matter is of local concern or statewide concern. But there is an ability for the town, if you are home rule, to push back on some of those state regulations that your community would not benefit from or that you disagree with and that you think is a matter of local concern. So I would just say that's an opportunity for you to sort of exercise your home rule authority.
So like the state's been kind of playing around with that vacancy tax. So that could maybe be one that might not apply to us. Is that we could fight? You heard about, what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Linda, do you have any thoughts on that? If the state were to put a vacancy tax on housing, I mean, I'm guessing if it's an affordable housing measure, they would say it's statewide concern.
They couldn't do that, can they?
They were gonna try.
Yeah.
That's not even, you're like, no. Can't tell me where I gotta be.
Jump in there, Linda.
So stupid.
Yeah, no, it's just, it really is. I mean, they have really categorized a lot of things as mixed concern, affordable housing, climate change. While, home rules may agree on some of those aspects, when you're talking about local zoning control and land use control, I would argue every day of the week that that's a matter of local concern about how your community grows and develops and what restrictions you impose. So I think that's an outstanding question.
Well, and would this protect us? So say we go to home rule, we do a 2% lodging tax, and then the state later says lodging taxes no one's able to do lodging tax again, kind of like the transfer tax. Would we be able to keep it because of grandfather clause?
I believe so.
So kind of protect the local taxes that we've already approved with.
And as
The
we've been researching this, and this seems to be more of a gray area than we maybe thought, my understanding is that we potentially, as a statutory community, could have a tax on lodging now if it was a per room per night fee versus a percentage.
Correct.
I have been told it's still called a tax by somebody else other than Linda. So Linda, I don't know, whatever we call it, right? But you can't do a percentage. So what that looks like, if we wanted to do something like that, and I'm making up these numbers, you could do $2 per night per room. I think it would have to apply across the board to lodging versus if you did want to do something just on STRs. And that's going to be the same whether it's $100 room, a $500 room, $1,000 room. Whereas a percentage, you get a percentage of that fee. So it can be seen as kind of more equitable in relation to the overall bill, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But I've also been told that, yeah, some things as a home rule community, we have better legal standing and are less likely to be legally challenged versus statutory, because some of these areas are not clearly defined in the
So
statutes.
if you get in a dispute with the state and have to get a court, then we're gonna bear the cost of all legal fees
Yes,
to fight it?
yes.
I mean, if we go to court with the state, whether we're home rule or statutory rule, if we would
Well,
have
it's better for a home rule.
Or state or local concern.
And then they
Yeah.
believe that they're, yes,
You know,
statutes.
I mean, your legal counsel should be all over ordinances or updates to the code that are trying to trump something of state concern that is clearly annotated as a state concern, and you're trying to change it for local concern. Your attorney should absolutely be raising that red flag. Like, this is a major issue. I mean, I would. You have good advocacy from CML and CAS and Northwest COG as far as, like, advocacy for legislators and ballot initiatives to help support or not support various types of ballot initiatives. I would lean on those types of entities. But as far as like adopting something, I mean, you can do that currently if you went to adopt a law that's just not allowed by state statutes, and you could be sued the same way. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily worry about that concern as much, because you can do that now. And if you converted to home rule, your attorney should be advising you if it's something of state concern that you're trying to trump locally.
When do we have to, what's sort of the deadline to make a decision?
Next meeting.
So to stay on track with the election timeline, Antoinette, correct me if I'm wrong, but really we think we need to have the initiating ordinance at our next board meeting. So we are basically looking for a motion this evening as to whether or not you want staff to bring forward that ordinance or not. And then you'd be making that final call on the 17th.
Guess I'm a little concerned with not having a town manager in place, or at least if we do have one, it'll be someone new. That we're gonna be understaffed and taking on a major project that we may not be prepared to take on at this point in time.
That is the one kind of shaky ground, but if we do the ordinance now,
Meeting.
right, or at the next meeting, right, if we do that ordinance now to move ahead with it, and we work our way through the hiring of our new manager, then at that point we can say, well, never mind. We're gonna wait. There's too much. Or we decide to go with it. We have that option, right? Because that'll be, the managers should be hired hopefully in July, since Michael will be gone.
Once you approve that ordinance,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm gonna defer to Linda or
Okay.
Antoinette on what that looks like if we put forth an ordinance. And then, because there are a number of steps and kind of official, the ordinance, the call for election.
Okay.
Very specific timeline you have to beat. And if you do an ordinance, Linda, I would let you answer that one too.
Okay.
Uh,
Did you hear the question, Linda?
yeah,
If we
I
put
think
forth
so.
an
So
ordinance and it's
could we-
approved on the 17th, and then the board wants to backtrack from that, what does that look like?
could we rewind it? I guess I'd want to look at that a little closer, but I think, you know, you adopt the ordinance, at some point you're going to call for an election within a certain number of days, and then that election has to be within 120 days. So with that timeline, I mean, I think, and then you have people pulling petitions, right, for charter commissioners. So I think at some point you would want to move forward. I think initially, you know, if you adopted an ordinance and within a month you decided to repeal it, I think you haven't gotten too far down the track. So I think that would be an option, but I'd want to look at that a little closer.
But I would suggest that the board, I think it really makes sense that, you know, if you put forth that ordinance, that we're planning to move forward with it, you know, and if something unexpected happens, I think the board's raised a lot of great questions. I think there's pros and cons with the current timing. Ultimately, I see it as kind of a long-term investment and providing that greater kind of flexibility to respond to things that we might not even be thinking about right now.
Sarah, could you put together for the next meeting, like the costs from like now to the election, like what that would cost? And then like after the election to when they're putting together the home rule charter?
So I would say, based on the estimates that Linda has provided, depending on how involved, would be somewhere between 15 and 32,000.
Yeah.
If we want to give dinner to the charter commission, you know, depending on how many times they meet and what that budget looks like, you know, we're potentially looking somewhere between 3 and 5,000, you know, on the high end. Maybe we do breakfast and it's cheaper, or, you know, in terms of the elections, it saves money if we wait till the following November. But I think to add an extra question, we're looking at something like
So I looked at
2,000.
the last ballot measure we did and coordinated with the county, that election would cost the town just over $3,000.
What do you have?
And then we'd have
About
two,
three.
right? So,
And then there's two elections. So you have the initial election to form the charter commission. And if the residents want to form form a charter commission and then to vote on the charter commission. And then the next election would be to vote on the actual charter.
yes.
And if the charter passes, then it stops there. If the charter does not pass, then the charter commission meets again. They have 6 months to recreate another charter, goes back to the vote of the people. And if the vote is yes, then it passes. And if it's no, then it's dead in the water.
Okay.
And then you got to add in marketing costs.
Yes, so I would say without marketing costs, we're looking at somewhere in the range of 17,000 to 50,000 to see it all the way through to that next election. I did ask Slade for those numbers, and I apologize, I have not looked at them in a while. I wasn't thinking about that. But again, there's a lot of flexibility there depending on how much they do versus what Sarah does, and the rest of staff, but
Because there's
maybe an
marketing
extra.
leading up to this election, and then if it passes, then there's the marketing campaign of informing people what the charter is, getting that word out, right? So there's kind of two different.
Correct. And part of what Magellan did, right? Like part of the reason of having them do that survey was to use what they found resonated with voters
Yes.
in terms of our messaging, right? And really kind of working that in. I can probably find this email from Late really quick. If you give me just a second.
And how much did this survey cost?
The slotted price was supposed to be 7,000 originally. We did come in a little under. I mean, at one point we were not getting the responses, so they were willing to bring that price down. We got pretty close to 150, but at most we're paying 7,000.
Yeah. But if you think about in the future, just that collecting tax that the county keeps, that's That'll be 150,000 a year plus,
Yeah.
right?
Could be 300.
Because it's not
300,000.
During
Right, if
negotiations.
it passes, so
Like, hey, we're gonna do home.
it's-
I have specifically said that at a mayor's, managers and commissioners.
I
meeting
missed that.
before.
What was that?
You talked
I,
about.
I said, have we used that during negotiation with the county? Like, if you don't break us off some change, we're gonna go home rule.
And Michael says,
That,
yeah.
that has taken place a few times.
They don't care.
I don't think so.
So Slate's proposal, when we talked to them about this a couple months ago, ran between 23,000 and then kind of some extra add-ons would be another 13,000. But talking with Sarah, she said that generally we get proposals that are a lot higher from Slate, and then she's able to do some of that work, so that brings that cost down. So we could set a budget for that, but
By 25 to 30,000 for the marketing.
So you're talking around 75,000 total. Well, and another 7,000 we already spent. I mean, it's a big investment for, based on the survey results, sort of, a questionable whether it'll pass or not.
Right. But again, that basically a fully uneducated public.
Yeah. Right,
So
yeah.
if the marketing does its job and educates the public and we bump that percentage up a couple points, then it passes.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to know why we can't just merge with Winter Park. But from what I understand, they don't want to because they would risk losing their ability to collect the transfer tax.
No, they wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't.
We would gain it.
It would-
Well, we would get, but adding another municipality, what do you think about that, Linda? So we have this adjacent community, Winter Park, that was grandfathered in, so they have a real estate transfer tax. They are home rule. If we were to,
We know this answer.
Yeah.
If we decide to be absorbed by Winter Park, then the transfer tax would
They would
cover
have to
for
annex it.
they ask it, but would they risk losing that, annexing another municipality that would gain that? I'm asking Linda, I'm not asking any board members.
Well, I haven't done any research about that.
Okay. All
I
right,
don't know
yeah,
if Kent's still online.
yeah.
We have anybody from,
And that was the conclusion
You know,
from that
because
study,
that
though.
was
Yeah,
what I got
it's-
from their last manager. He said that they weren't willing to risk that. Anyway, that's food for thought. Because
think
that
that's-
will be something we have to answer. Because that was a lot of the questions, but that would come down. I think that we should give it a shot. We've got good information here. We know what the community really questioned. I think in the long run, it could be beneficial. And if we have a good commission, because one of my big concerns is that we keep the guardrails up that the state offers. Did you have anything for us before you leave? Okay. The guardrails up so that, we can't run amok and we can't be pushed into doing something that we don't want because we can't say, well, it's state statute. We can't do that, which has been kind of convenient in the past, but anyway,
Well, I think you have to think too, the charter commission writes the charter, not the town board.
right.
So you have to adopt what they write. You don't have a say in it if you like it or not. So
Yeah.
that is something, it is a risk that you do take. And you hope that your staff and your legal counsel is good guidance, that they do write a good charter.
but yeah, there's a bit of a leap of faith
Yeah.
for sure.
Can a town board member, if they get 25 signatures, serve on that commission?
So my understanding, and I'm gonna ask Linda to confirm this, is that you can. Some communities opt not to have that separation between the board and the charter that will be dictating how the board functions. But some people may see that as making sense in terms of that link between the elected body.
I thought we discussed this and we kind of decided that we would attempt to fill the 9 seats outside of the board. And if that was unable to happen, then start looking within.
Yeah, that's what was previously
That's
discussed.
what I recall.
Yeah.
But didn't Jefferson County have a failed election this year on home rule. It was, I don't know if it was the county or, but it was, part of it was because it sounded like the board had stacked the commission and they felt like it was not,
The concerns were coming to reality.
yeah.
And the charter members have to live with the city limits of Fraser?
Yes.
They have to
Think
be
there's nine people
electors.
that are willing to donate their time to do it.
I think we could find that.
I know there are some communities that have had to go back a couple times to have their charter approved. I cannot recall if Superior, I don't know if you happen to know, Linda, I feel like Superior recently adopted a home rule charter. I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, I can't think off the top of my head, but I do know there have been a couple that had to go twice.
My understanding is Granby had this on the ballot some time ago and it did not pass.
Hmm.
But I don't know the details of that. I think the vote was just to form the home rule charter.
Yeah, and there was no advocation for what they would use those funds for. For things like lodging tax. It was
Okay.
very kind of a gray area as
Right.
it's been relayed to me because I've asked that question too.
And I do think the DDA ballot measure is something to keep in mind. We were not hearing a
Barely
lot of
passed.
negative opposition and it passed, but it passed
2 votes.
pretty narrowly, right? Sure, there's plenty of people out there that had no idea what a downtown development authority was that were voting, right? And so I think that education piece would be critical.
I would say that if the board is going to consider an ordinance to move this forward at the next meeting, that you also pledge to support this or not support it, advocate for your own, for how you want to advocate and, individually, but be advocates for, or against, be actively involved in this. And if you have an assumption that it's just going to pass, I think there were some assumptions with the DDA that were misplaced, to Sarah's point, and they did a lot of work on the radio station. And we talked about, I think every time they were on the radio station, I think it increased the favor 1%, and it was providing opportunities for Q&A with the public and engaging and providing transparency. So I would just challenge the board that if you were going to look at passing this, supporting the staff's time to dedicate to this, that you do your part as well.
I don't think the timing's right. I think it's a risk. We're spending a lot of money and time, and it doesn't sound like it's a slam dunk.
And if it's not now, we have to wait for 2 years, right?
Yep.
Pretty much. For the next net, well, but then we,
If you want to coordinate with the county, then you have to wait 2 years, but you could do a special election at any time and move forward with this process at any time the board would want to.
But the real value right now is politically is doing it in an election year where the young kids vote. And they're not going to vote in 2027. They're going to vote in 28.
Yep.
And it has to be with the county.
I mean, we've talked about this the last 2 years in our town board retreats.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody was in favor of it. And I understand if the reason for delay is because of turnover in town manager, then I guess so be it. But it seems like everybody was in favor of this over the last, few discussions.
I'm in favor of going forward this year.
well, and Linda did say if within that month or so, we could probably do a repeal. If we, for some reason, just panicked,
Sure.
but our staff never panics. And Sarah, because you're the assistant town manager, now you're the interim town manager? Yet? We'll bring,
As of July 1st.
as of
We'll
July
bring that
1st.
forward we'll bring that forward to the board on June 17th.
Okay. If you're game and you're comfortable with taking this on, because a lot of the big things that you accomplish now are behind us. DDA is kind of running. You could find somebody else to fill your role in there. And we got the bike park up and running, which was a big part of your time. She's shaking her head, yes.
There will always be plenty. I mean, we can do this. I think, yeah, the board this has to be the board's priority. And so this is where those staff resources go for,
Okay.
you know, the number of months that it takes to move this forward.
Yeah. And do you feel like we're going to be in a good enough place with the our housing project? And now that we hired this company to work with?
I think so. I mean, I think the lease up is going to be a process, right? We have to work with Griffith's Blessing to get them what they need to successfully do this. So I think it will take some staff efforts, but you know, the bonds close tomorrow. If there's no great disaster, so that'll be a huge kind of relief and a piece of work off our plates.
Okay.
We have to continue to turn in grant reports for, you know, the grant funding we're getting. And I mean, so there's going to be plenty of work and there are going to be transitions.
Yeah.
So I think the time is an honest question worth evaluating. But again, if this is what the board wants to prioritize, then we just recognize that this is where staff's time is going, you know, and maybe there's a couple other things that get kicked down the road in terms of addressing. But I will second what Michael said, that I think if we do this, if the town wants to do this and the board wants to do this, the board really has to be behind this and has to be, you know, cheerleaders for it and out communicating with the public and talking to people about possibly being commissioners and not take for granted that it will pass.
So just as far as funding goes for things like excise tax and lodging tax, I mean, the critical path is if you take this as to form the commission this November. Let's say you do a special election next spring for approving that charter with the voters, and then you can potentially go for a November ballot initiative the following November for replacing or putting in the lodging tax to replace the counties. That starts bringing in that funding starting January 1st of 2028. So that helps complement a lot of the different initiatives that you have. You know, staff is working on things like transit hub, you know, trying to build out this transit hub center. And we're working on every types of projects that are related to lodging tax, just for an example. And if you're trying to build the momentum towards accomplishing those types of projects, a lot of it does come down to funding. So that's just something I would just note.
I think this is the time. I mean, I know it's a tough deal with Michael leaving, but I think the staff is up for it. They appear to be. And I think politically, it's the time to get these young voters engaged. And that we as a board really need to be behind it in order to make it happen. Because in the past, we've had elections like where we just stood there and threw the cards in the air and people picked them up and it didn't go the way we wanted. And if we don't get out there and campaign and hire somebody that's really good to help us with the marketing, it won't succeed. But if everybody's committed and wants to do it and makes a commitment that they will be supportive of it, I think we will be successful.
And we need those honest, really honest pros and cons.
I'll say I'm in the unsure category.
You're what's that?
I'm in the unsure category. I think that's what they used, unsure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm kind of a believer that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't feel handcuffed as a town in any of our decisions currently. It does seem like just a mechanism to tax more. I mean, this really is about a lodging tax conversation in my mind. This is where it points to. That's where our conversation is. It's a mechanism to get to more taxes, is what it sounds like.
Even though it's not raising anybody's tax, it's but having that
Letting
income
us keep what.
at least for lodging.
Yeah, you know, but again, we're negotiating that way. I don't know if we'll have more negotiations. I just don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it's a major change because we want to. You know, I don't think there's any case of need. I don't Yeah. So I guess I'm in the unsure. I see some advantages, but I don't see why we would do it.
Ms. Fisher, what do you?
I'm with Adam. I feel like
Mhm.
I feel like everything was a way to get more taxes out of people.
See, I think the differentiation is that we're not getting more taxes, we're getting to keep the taxes that people are paying.
Well, that's the
If
one.
we-
example.
If we
But the
pass
tax
it,
board-
That's the
Taxes
one
even upstate
example,
taxes.
but it does give us
Huge
chance
place.
to make other fees and the likes.
Right. And I have heard that when municipalities collect their own sales tax, they get more sales tax. Like the state collects it and then they give it back to us, and it's always less than what it
you know,
should be.
and we might have a different dynamic with the county properties all, because I know some of those geocodings up in Meadow Ridge are off and we get sales tax based on county property.
Sure.
I think that's a hedge. I don't know how that one plays out.
Yeah.
Well, and that's always an option. You
yeah,
don't
right.
have to self-collect if you don't want to. You can still have the state collect and then you receive those taxes. So it's up to the town whether, when you go home rule, whether or not you want to be self-collecting or not.
I don't think the timing's right. And we're not Castle Pines, and we're not Centennial, we're a small community in terms of, our revenues, it's tiny compared to some of these large communities. We don't have that much money. We're gonna spend 75 to 100 grand and hoping it's gonna pass over, 2 years, a year and a half.
It's interesting. I think our opinions match the survey results.
Yeah.
It's 3 to 4, it's 51 to 50. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty representative.
And I will just say, Louis, not to persuade one way or another, but if that initial ballot measure doesn't pass, those costs are, much less. Like the legal fees to get us from here to the election are not as significant as, moving through that charter process. And then we're not paying for food, again, which we don't have to do, but might be nice to feed the charter commission and so it, just to keep that in mind. That is
Anyway,
accurate.
I'd like to see some statistics on other home rule mountain communities. What are their sales taxes like? I mean, because Winter Parks is crazy, right? It's the highest in the state.
Yeah.
That's only 1% higher than ours.
too far.
Well, I think that's our
So
point.
with Tabor, just to be clear, with Tabor, just like now, if you were to look at increasing your sales tax, it still goes to the voters. That doesn't change at all when you go home rule. Every ballot initiative for tax goes to the voters. They either approve it or they disapprove it. So there's no taxes. Even if you look to adopt a lodging tax, it still goes to the voters.
That would be a natural election.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we could, as a statutory community, we could go to the voters now to raise our sales tax or mill levies.
Yes.
This allows for different types of taxation that again, still have to be approved. So it's more flexible. It could be more targeted taxes. Again, with like the STR example, just as an example.
Yeah.
So if we add a nightly fee, would that have to go to the voters?
Yes, is my understanding. Yeah, because it's
That seems
considered an
like an easy
occupation
way to
tax.
do it.
But it's like $2 versus
You
a
take it
percentage
whatever
of
you want.
the rooms. That doesn't,
That's
like nothing. It's not worth the effort.
Yeah.
I have a huge administrative concern about how you collect those fees because those are being charged through like Airbnb and VRBO, and taxes are self-collected by the state and then collected by the state and then given back to the town. But if you have a fee, I don't know how that works administratively, but we can look further into that option, to kind of.
Well, and just one clarification there, Michael. I actually asked Linda about this earlier because so if we were to become home rule, we would have the option to start collecting our own sales tax and other taxes, right? There would be an expense with that, either adding a staff member or getting some third-party software or some system up and running to do that, right? We can continue to have the state collect that tax. So then we don't have any added expense that takes out our ability to audit that process, which could be one of the potential benefits that may or may not work in our favor. But if we are adding additional taxes that are not part of what we currently can do as a statutory community, then we would have to self-collect those taxes Did I state that correctly,
Yeah,
Linda?
that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But that still preserves the 2% county lodging tax, so it would be an addition to.
My understanding is, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, I think I asked a different attorney about this, but my understanding is if we do a $2 fee or 2%, 5%, whatever it is, that supplants the county's lodging tax.
And I would want to look at what the county, what their ballot question was.
Got that.
Okay.
Okay.
But the flat fee really, I mean, it doesn't sound like it would generate anything significant for the town.
Okay.
And all of the constitutional limitations in Colorado still apply, right? So voter approval for tax policy changes, for tax increases, for new taxes. Always the voters have to approve that, so it's not an automatic, tax increase with a charter adoption.
Call for a vote, maybe?
Yeah.
Or do you want to run around
So I
circles?
think we need a motion of some sort.
So you can make a motion either to move forward with the ordinance, with staff bringing forth an ordinance at our next meeting to initiate that process. The
Yeah.
charter commission process.
Yeah.
My gut kind of tells me too that the timing isn't right. I see all the right reasons why it is, but my gut's telling me that it's not the right time.
When would the right time be? What do you think?
Well, once our staffing settled down and we have a new town manager in place, when we know right now, up until now, our sales tax revenue or our tax revenues were down, what, 13%? 14 the last couple months. Are we gonna have a stellar summer? Are we gonna come out ahead? Are we in a position to spend the additional money out of our budget right now?
I think we budgeted for this, didn't we?
No, I don't think so.
For home rule?
I think we budget 35,000 in our budget this year for home rule.
Okay. And does that include our conference earlier? No, that was part of it.
With the Magellan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
I believe it covers.
our board retreat.
I can bring those. Oh, the board retreat?
Yeah.
No, those are just costs for the board retreat. So I can verify that and bring that to the next meeting.
It's hard. Tough one.
So, I mean, just one point for the DDA. Sarah, how much did I do for the DDA? Be honest.
How much did Michael do for the DDA?
Michael Breck do for the DDA.
Michael told me to go out and form a downtown development authority.
I understand.
He guided the process.
With Sarah's role and Antoinette's role and stuff like that, if you're looking at Sarah, Sarah's gonna be looking at the interim role. And that could be taking up some of her time. So some reprioritization may be needed, as far as things that she is focused on, if she wants to allow her capacity to pursue this. It's just something I would just think about.
Well, my concern is if we pass this and it's a 3-4 vote, that doesn't give a mandate and it doesn't make me feel real comfortable of how we go out into the community when we have 4 people saying yay, 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 and 3 people going, not so much. So I think that's a concern.
I think also between now and then, if you do have any other specific questions, please let us know and we'll provide those Q&As at the next meeting as well. Some things are hard for Linda to obviously answer on the fly, but we can be a little more thoughtful and take the time to get you validated answers on some of these questions. Just so that you feel like you are making an informed decision for or against.
And there is included in your packet, there's a CML overview, as well as the CML handbook. So I think there is good information in there. Again, I think we've tried to share that information kind of in a summary form in terms of some of the potential advantages and some of the considerations. If the board provides a motion to move forward and we bring forth the ordinance at the next meeting, the board would still be able to make that decision. We would be paying, Linda for her time to help craft that ordinance to make sure it was crafted correctly. But
That's kind of the direction I'm leaning is, I'm an unsure category. Might as well read an ordinance before I vote no against it. If I'm to vote no, so I'm kind of leaning towards saying, go ahead to write the ordinance, but that I'm in the unsure category. I don't know what's going to be in it until I see it, so.
I mean, the meat and bones of it, what's the expression, would be that we are moving forward with the ballot initiative, and this will be put forth to the voters to form a home rule commission, and then probably a bunch of legal language around that.
Would be, I think, informational language in that ordinance that could help.
Yeah, and it gives us 2 more weeks to, I've heard from a lot of people that receive texts asking questions and stuff, and, I withheld my interface just because I wanted them to answer. I didn't want to influence them. So.
So what do you think, board? Do you want to make a motion? I'm in agreement with Peggy. If the board is split, it's not going to pass. It just shows the community like there's reason to doubt this. So if the board is united to move forward, then
Don't pay attention to what we vote.
I don't know. Like the discussion will occur through the community.
Yeah, I think I don't know, just I don't think it's a good time for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And if we have to pull staff off of this and we're looking at public works, we're not going to build it out, but we're going to be putting adjuncts in the public works facility, and that's going to, anyway, just got this feeling that that's right. That's what you thought. Okay, so no resolution? Anybody gonna make a resolution? Or a motion?
Yeah. We can just decide to do this later.
Bring it back. Bring it back maybe.
Well, I think once the hotel's up and running and see some of the revenues, that might be the motivating factor.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think we
Right.
need a motion or anything then. Just
Nope, hopefully we just took a bunch off your plate, and thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Put into this, and
Thank
thank
you,
you, Linda.
Linda.
Thank
Thank
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
okay. So can I have a motion to open the public hearing regarding ordinance 537, amending chapter 19 regarding school land dedications and fees in lieu?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Started, or should I hold off a minute or two?
Yeah, I think you're fine.
Okay. Good evening, trustees and mayor. I'm Alan Sealiff, Assistant Town Planner. Tonight I'll be presenting on ordinance 537, the chapter 19 code amendment regarding land dedications and fees in lieu. Some background on this. So our current standards and our current methodology dates to 1998. At that point, the town adopted a resolution documenting process and procedure for this, partly based on a study from the 1990s based on the Ukraine School District. And then it also covered park dedication requirements. There's some language in the current code regarding this process. Most of it was in a resolution at that time, and it hasn't been updated in
almost 30 years. Kind of fast forward to today, so this first appeared on staff's radar, part of the school district's efforts to update that fee in lieu study. They did an updated study to kind of more formalize their existing impact fees. Call it an impact fee because it's based on calculations of like yields of students in development areas and their school district areas. So this was formalized and adopted by the school district in April 2025. Staff brought this forward, you may recall, first to the Board of Trustees last August, I believe it was discussed. At that point, it was just recommending to do a new resolution. The board opted not to act at that point, but to have some further coordination with the school district, ultimately to pursue an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement, and kind of track with some of our neighboring jurisdictions. So since this was last discussed in August, an IGA has been brought forward. This went to the Board of Trustees in February, you may recall. It was approved. The school district was present at that point to kind of walk through it. The IGA, in part, that kind of the operating and the processing for these school fees and kind of more formalized development review, calculation requests, transfer of land if and when it was to occur. So the IGA is already in place, and this is kind of the last component of that effort, is to update the code to reflect the final provisions of the IGA. Again, it's substantially similar, borrowed from the Winter Park IGA that they had already approved. And just one of the key components in it, or a question that's come up is, we're not locked into that methodology necessarily for the next 20, 30 years. The IGA request requires that that study be updated at least every 4 years, and it can't be updated more often if requested by a school district or the town. So summary of changes, real high level, but this tweaks and clarifies the language. It adds mixed use development into it in addition to just residential. So anything that's gonna have a residential component is now fully covered. The table that's included in the adopting ordinance borrows and brings forward from the study the updated figures. Now, the figures in general are bring forward less of a requirement in terms of dedication and a monetary component, but that's reflected in the science, the data that was produced in that study. So it's more legally defensible if those requests are ever challenged. And then it clarifies that the dedications go directly to the school district, but it takes out kind of town management of land if that was ever to occur in terms of being an intermediary. The other big component of the ordinance is it helps define the fee in lieu discussion. So not only land dedications for parks or schools, but at kind of mutual review of staff, developer, negotiation, and ultimately approval by the town board. In a lot of circumstances, depending on the scale and scope, it doesn't make sense to just accept land that doesn't really have a form or function if it's not included as part of maybe a larger subdivision. So that's where fees in lieu come in. It's a proportional kind of monetary compensation in lieu of the land dedication. So this documents that it's based on that study, and then for parks, it documents the previous method, which was 5% dedication that was approved in the 1998 resolution. So this just puts it in the code, make sure that it's much more visible and available for code review, for awareness, that it's not kind of a resolution that people may or may not be as aware of. And then it expands some of the clarifying language about appropriate uses. So that's it in terms of my summary of it. Just confirming this was noticed as a public hearing. It did go to the Planning Commission for the initial review and recommendation on March 25th. It was recommended without revisions. Publications taking place May 13th. So with that, staff is recommending this be formally approved. If approved, it would take effect 30 days after publication, so no sooner than July 10th. That concludes it for the presentation. I don't know if there's any questions.
Any questions for Alan?
So the planning commission recommended approval.
Do we need, to close the public hearing before we have a motion?
Yes, we also need to open public comment, which I haven't done
Okay.
quite yet, but. Anything from the board? Any public comment? Okay,
I move to close the public hearing.
any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay,
I'd like to make a recommendation to approve a resolution recommending the approval of a code amendment regarding land dedications and payment of fees in lieu of dedications, which is resolution 2026-0301 planning.
No, it's an ordinance.
Ordinance 37.
ordinance.
Wait a minute.
Ordinance
Oh,
number
you're,
five
that's the
thirty-seven.
planning commission resolution.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
So just ordinance.
Town of Fraser.
Ordinance 537, amending chapter 19 regarding school and land dedications and fees in lieu.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Good job cranking through that one.
All right.
All right. Moving on to updates. We'll start with Michael.
All right, did get an update from Paul earlier today that Phase will begin work on Clayton Court. They've been mobilizing next week.
Yeah, they'll mobilize on the 8th. We're still, Mountain Parks Electric contractor and Comcast contractors are still in there, but they'll be able to work at opposite ends of the project. But Phase will be mobilizing and getting started on cutting that road grade in. And then we're just finalizing the temporary construction easements with 3 property owners. We already have 1 in hand. Everybody is on board with those to get that project completed this summer.
And the property owners?
They're on board as well. We've spoken
Great.
with, yeah, they're all,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Wow, great.
That's kudos to Brad if you see him. He's been working that pretty hard.
Okay.
Nice.
Good job,
Good
Brad.
job, Brad.
Attaboy, Brad. Okay.
Also, just an update on the town manager recruitment status. The hiring committee has identified the final 7 that will proceed to the first round. We will keep those names confidential until we get to the final 3 for the purposes of their own employers, if that is something that is sensitive to the individual. But we'll be looking at scheduling some interviews here soon and be getting that email out. I'll be sending that. I have it already drafted and ready to go. I've just been trying to get a hold of a lot of these people, just either on the phone or via email. And we'll finish reaching out to those and get that email out tonight or tomorrow.
Who's on the hiring committee?
So the hiring committee consists of myself, Antoinette, Lori Waters, Brian, Peggy, and John Stavney from Northwest Cog. So we've identified those, and we'll be scheduling, reaching out to them to schedule the first round of interviews for that, and then hopefully bringing a recommendation for a final 3 to the next board meeting on June 17th.
Okay.
Also, we have received our wastewater discharge permit after almost 10 years. So while that's great, the concerns that we did have about a very difficult nitrogen limit has been conveyed in that permit, which does make things difficult when we're looking at things like expansion and very expensive treatment processes for denitrification before the wastewater is discharged back into the Fraser River. So we are working through that to determine whether or not we want to go through a public hearing and appeal process. And we'll be working with our legal team, water quality team, and the other sanitation managers to have consensus before we bring that forward for any type of approval or direction on what we recommend to do as far as trying to appeal that portion of the permit based on unreasonable ability to provide that type of treatment. So we are working through that. Just received that permit last Friday. So
Okay.
that's going on.
Wow, 10 years.
As has been mentioned, we are all set. I was actually just reviewing my email. We did get confirmation from Chaffa this evening that we are all set to close tomorrow on the closing for not only the bonds for St. Louis Landing, but also the Chaffa Prop 123 funds. And we'll be looking at that closing tomorrow morning. So that's all confirmed. And unless, you know, there's a wildlife attack where this takes place, then, you know, something of that nature. We are all good to go, and we'll confirm this once it actually happens and those transfers.
No wildlife attacks stopping this.
I'm
No,
with you.
No boots,
no,
no bear, no lions.
no mice, no.
And lastly, but not leastly, I'd like to introduce Jack Seward. We did the same introduction after a long planning commission meeting last week. Jack, you want to come up and introduce yourself?
Do I have to stand up or can I stay here?
Absolutely. You gotta stand up.
Yeah, Jack.
Name, address.
I don't have a local address yet, so.
But it's really close.
It's 123 Nowhere Street. I'm Jack Seward, as of, I think this is day 5 on the job for me. I'm excited to join you all as the new town planner. I have done a great many things in a great many places. Most recently, I worked for the Stapleton Development Corporation as we built what is now the Central Park neighborhood in Denver, the site of the old Stapleton International Airport. Although we now call that Central Park because a great number of things that have occurred over the years. And so very, very excited to be here in Fraser, working with a great team here, and I'm excited to work with all of you. And hopefully we can find time to get to know each other in the not too distant future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
That's all.
Any other updates?
I just want to tell everybody that on June 13th at 4:30 in the afternoon, we're showing Tread at the movie theater as a kickoff for the film festival. So getting the word out. So hope you all will join us.
It's a good movie.
Glenn Trainer's event tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Glenn,
Is it
timer.
free at the theater or?
No, I think it's 21.95 or something.
Okay.
Five
Just curious.
days.
Who will tell my,
Yeah.
you know, tell everyone.
The guy have any updates? Anybody else? Anything else from staff? Okay, great. Well, we are gonna jump into.
Sarah's trying to find her microphone.
I was just gonna say, I know a lot of you were there, but thank you for coming out if you're able to make it to the bike park grand opening, but that did go off successfully. The bike park was featured on Channel 9 News this past week as well. So hopefully we're getting some good publicity and it'll get a lot of use over the summertime.
It was great. It was really fun.
Yeah, I think we had
It
a
was
great turnout.
Wonderful event.
I was working, but everyone came in after and said it was great.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Like to hear they went to the bike park and then they visited our local business.
Yeah.
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 Revenues are good to the roof now.
That's right. I think doing some sort of bike day, Fraser Mountain Bike Festival, wouldn't be a bad idea. It was such a great event, and I think it's something that we could do annually. I think it'd be cool.
Like as a kickoff for the summer?
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to remind everybody that Glenn's retirement party is tomorrow from 4 to 6 at the Headwaters.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, shoot.
All right. Well, we are going to jump into 2 executive sessions. No decisions are going to be made, so we won't come back. We'll just adjourn the meeting afterwards.
That's usually true. That's why I said usually.
Okay, I move to enter into 2 executive sessions. The first executive session.
Can we do it?
Hey, guys, we're trying to do the motions for executive session real quick.
The first executive session is for the conference with the Town Water Council for the purposes of receiving legal advice for specific questions under CRS Section 24-6-4024B regarding water rights discussion, to include the town manager, Michael Brack, the assistant town manager, Sarah Catanzarite, Public Works Director, Paul Johnson, town planner, Jack Stewart, and Town Water Council, Chris Thorne and Steve Barrett. The second executive session for the purposes of determining positions relative to the matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators under CRS Section 24-6-4024E regarding regional transit authority to include the town manager, Michael Brack, assistant town manager, Sarah Catanzarite, town planner, Jack Stewart, Catherine Wynn, and Public Works Director, Paul Johnson.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks everyone. Let's take a minute.
Chris, would you like to give your speech about it not being recorded this evening?
I'd be happy to. Good evening, everyone. This is Chris Thorne, and I'm acting as Water Rights Counsel to the Board of Trustees of the Town of Fraser in this executive session. In my opinion, the discussions that will follow constitute privileged attorney-client communication under Section 24-6-402, paren 4, paren B of the Colorado Revised Statutes. And as a result, no record will be kept of the portions of this executive session following this statement.
Chris. And for those online, we won't be coming back. We will be adjourning and not reopening the meeting to adjourn. Thank you. So.
Maybe I'll just slip out like a slippery snake.
Like, goodbye.
Yeah, we internet's planning something for the last Wednesday of this month, and I'm just gonna invite the board to it.
What are you moving?
It's a good question. What'd you say, Liz?
When are you moving?
Well, I'm not